Chapter 674. W.H. What, after a long while, Chen Qingshan finally recovered from his shock. He looked at Ling Xiao blankly, his lips trembling. Is what the saint said true? His voice was extremely hoarse, but there was a hint of hope in it. I've heard of a type of pill that can revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. However, the spiritual materials required to concoct this pill are extremely rare and rare. I'm afraid it won't be a simple process to concoct the pill. Ling Xiao's expression was calm as he raised his head to look at the sky. His Taoist rhyme was leisurely and there was a sense of transcendence. Saint, as long as you can save Sir, I'll do anything you ask me to. Chen Qingshan's originally pale face was suddenly suffused with a wisp of excitement. Humans would only resort to unscrupulous means when they were at their most desperate. At this moment, this immortal sect disciple no longer cared why Ling Xiao wanted to help him. He only wanted Gu Xi'er to live. That way, he would be doomed eternally. He would not regret becoming a demon. That one look had become the deepest obsession in Chen Qingshan's heart. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, was his only hope. The chosen one is moved and has the intention to submit. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1,000 luck points and 10,000 villain points. Hearing the system's notification, Ling Xiao was not surprised at all. Chen Qingshan's model was the perfect example of falling from the righteous path to the demonic path. In his eyes, there was no difference between an immortal and a demon. However, if he wanted to make him submit completely, he would have to start with Gu Xi'er. The 9 Revolutions soul return pill was too rare. However, as long as he had Gu Xi'er's corpse in his hands, Chen Qingshan would not dare to have any thoughts of betrayal. At that time, after using up all the light and heat, it would not be a bad idea to kill him. Ling Xiao stared at the golden rod in his hand with a playful gaze, and the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. This spirit treasure of yours is really strange. With your current cultivation, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to control it. How about this? You can use this Tao sword first, and I'll help you control this evil treasure. With that, Ling Xiao casually took out a supreme-grade Tao sword and the soul-sucking ghost pearl from his cosmos bag and tossed them to Chen Qingshan. A trace of astonishment flashed across the latter's face. As Holy Son, although this staff of mine has the evil power of swallowing people's blood essence, how can it be comparable to 2 Tao artifacts? It's all right. You only need to remember that from today onwards, you are no longer a disciple of the immortal profound sect. Instead, you are the young master of the 10,000 Ghost Mountain. Gu Xi'er's revival requires a very important medicinal ingredient. It requires the condensation of the divine souls of millions and millions of living beings. This blood bead can accumulate divine souls. Go and kill them. Ling Xiao shook his head. His tone was indifferent, but his words caused Chen Qingshan's expression to freeze once again. The divine souls of billions of living beings? How many people did he have to kill in order to save Xi'er's life? Suddenly, Chen Qingshan seemed to hesitate. As the Holy Son, it was indeed inconvenient for Ling Xiao to do this. However, although he no longer had the obsession of being an immortal or a devil, wasn't it a little too cruel to slaughter all living beings? The battle for the path of Tao is originally a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. As long as you abide by your heart and don't kill mortals, what harm is there? Back when the Holy Church ruled the world, didn't they also kill 100,000 demonic disciples? Moreover, if you don't kill them now, will the world let you go? I have given you a chance. Whether you do it or not, it is up to you to decide. Ling Xiao kept the golden staff and placed Gu Xi'er's corpse into the Glaze ancient pagoda. Then, he turned around and walked towards the distant mountain. If you want a horse to run, you have to feed it medicine. The soul-sucking ghost pearl contained the divine soul imprint that he had placed. It was impossible for Chen Qingshan to break it. The soul-sucking ghost pearl was given to him as a container. It was also a test. As for whether Chen Qingshan would be killed by others, Ling Xiao guessed that there was an 80% chance that he would not be killed. Moreover, he had other arrangements just in case. Beside Ling Xiao, Xiao Po's eyes narrowed. Although he felt a chill in his heart, he did not dare to say anything. To be honest, he did not feel that Ling Xiao's words were flawed. In the azure sky world, when sex attacked, hundreds of thousands of cultivators would die. This path of immortal cultivation was all about fighting. What one obtained through luck was thousands of dead bodies and a sea of blood. Killing people was also a form of cultivation. However, he suddenly felt a little lost. Did Yi Qingchan know this young man's true colors? A proud girl of the Foliaceae family had actually become a demonic concubine? In the Sky Hall, Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back. He looked indifferent. The main reason why he asked Chen Qingshan to kill people was that the soul-sucking ghost pearl could swallow a person's divine soul and store it in the pearl. Ling Xiao's soul palace also needed to swallow divine souls to cultivate. Back in the western border, Ling Xiao had slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people on the battlefield. However, he did not have many chances to do so now. Hence, he needed a puppet to help him secretly collect divine souls. When the time came, he only needed to release the soul power in the pearl to nourish the soul palace. It would save time and energy, and he would not need to take any risk. The first divine envoy was still in the south region. Slaughtering living beings would inevitably attract the attention of the 9th-grade divine emperor. Moreover, ever since Ling Xiao transmitted his voice to Lord Dugu, he felt that this person's voice was a little familiar. The Thousand Ghosts Mountain Master was now Ling Xiao's sole slave. With him following Ling Xiao, he could protect his life. Secondly, he could play a very good role as a leader. It was common for demonic sects to use cruel methods. This kind of thing was unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time. Now, Chen Qingshan's Tao heart had been shattered, and it had turned into a demonic heart. Shouldn't demonic sects kill all living beings for one person? After all, Gu Xier's corpse was in his hands. Even if Chen Qingshan still had a trace of righteousness in his heart, it would be destroyed in the endless slaughter. I said that I would try my best to save Gu Xier, but I did not say that I would definitely save her. I'm sorry. The process was very smooth and the method was correct. However, Xia was too dead. Xiong Huan, do you recognize this metal? Ling Xiao took out the golden metal rod. Although it was a long rod, it was more accurate to call it a piece of divine metal in the shape of a rod. On the surface, there was nothing special about this metal. It looked like an ordinary metal. However, Ling Xiao saw with his own eyes that Chen Qingshan had used this metal to swallow the blood essence of a divine overlord expert. It was normal for a son of destiny to kill enemies of a higher realm. However, Chen Qingshan's leap was too big. Killing a divine overlord at the profound clear stage? It did not mean that he could kill an emperor god after becoming a divine overlord. It was just that this piece of metal was very magical. This is, Xiong Huan furrowed his brows tightly. He reached out to touch the metal and his eyes suddenly narrowed. This is primordial black gold. Primordial black gold. Ling Xiao's eyes immediately revealed a hint of surprise. Anything that could be related to the ancient times was definitely a rare treasure. However, Ling Xiao was even more confused now. How could there be so many treasures in this desolate place in the lower realm? He had met at least 20 sons of destiny, if not 1,000, right? Instinctively, Ling Xiao felt that there was a bigger secret in this world other than the Saint sect. That's right. Master, it is said that this primordial black gold was born from the primordial black gold's origin. It contains the purest primordial black gold's power. If a mortal body touches this metal, it will be refined into nothingness. Xiong Huan's expression was serious. Then, he smiled and said, however, Master, this metal is the best choice for refining Dharma treasures. Refining Dharma treasures? Ling Xiao smiled gently. No wonder. When he saw this metal for the first time, the treasures in his soul sea buzzed. It turned out that this divine metal was the most precious metal in the world. In other words, to spiritual treasures, this metal was like elixirs to cultivators. To Ling Xiao, the heavenly mandate was like chives and wolfberries to everyone. It was very nutritious. Chapter 675. It's a magical item. Ling Xiao sized up the golden meteoric iron in his hand. After pondering for a while, he kept it in his sea of soul. Although he did not know why the metal was no longer as powerful as before. According to Xiong Huan, the appearance of the metal must have shocked the Shurpatian and caused countless strange phenomena. However, Ling Xiao soon guessed the reason. The primordial mystic metal was Chen Qingshan's golden finger. Given the character of a destined person, the golden finger would be hidden and used at the end. Therefore, Chen Qingshan must have found it by accident when the metal was born and dripped a drop of his all-purpose blood essence on it. Therefore, the metal recognized its master. Although it looked ordinary on the surface, it could turn the situation around at the crucial moment. Moreover, when Chen Qingshan was injured by Qin Yu's halberd, the reason why the metal rod could heal his injuries was most likely because it had the special effect of drinking blood. It was very reasonable to drink someone's blood and then return it to its master. Don't ask me how I know. Brothers, I also guessed it. Regardless, the metal was a magical item. I wonder if the primordial demonic blade would have some changes after devouring it? Buzz. Ling Xiao's soul sea was suppressed by the primordial ancestral symbol. Not to mention the metal, even a grand mist sacred treasure was enough to suppress it. However, perhaps it had sensed the terror of this place, but the metal actually blossomed with resplendent, profound light. However, before the light shone for too long, a pitch-black blade shadow suddenly descended from the sky. It emitted a boundless demonic aura and instantly enveloped the metal. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, Ling Xiao did not appear again. Now, the leaks in the immortal mystic ancient sect had basically become his chess pieces. Next, he would wait for the right time and wait for them to use their last bit of strength before harvesting them gently. During this time, Chen Qingshan finally made up his mind and left the territory to go to the Thousand Ghost Mountain. Ling Xiao guessed that since this young man had turned into a demon, cultivating the Thousand Ghost Mountain Lord's blood demon swallowing heaven's technique would be like a fish in water. In that case, you swallow the blood, I collect the soul. Everyone would help each other. Why not? The situation in the southern border was going to be chaotic. Although Phoenix Rouge had made many mistakes in his calculations, he was right about one thing. The more chaotic the situation was, the more opportunities the villains would have. At the top of the 7th peak, in the bamboo garden, Phoenix Rouge stood with her hands clasped behind her back, looking a little tired. For 3 whole days, she did not leave the 7th summit, nor did she try to find out where Ling Xiao had gone. At this moment, her heart was already filled with helplessness. From the looks of it, whether it was Chen Qingshan or Ling Xiao, they were both destined. Otherwise, how could the two of them have survived after experiencing this turmoil? Chen Qingshan colluded with the Devil Gate and massacred the disciples of the immortal mystic immortal sect. He was killed by the sect master and master, but in the end, he was still safe and sound? If it were any other villain, there wouldn't even be a speck of dust left. As for Ling Xiao, it was even clearer. She had already used the sky poison and injected it into the youth's mouth. But he was completely unharmed. If it weren't for the mandate of heaven, how could he resist the incurable poison in this world? In other words, if the heavenly poison's power was so weak, how could the heavenly poison Saint Physique be tolerated by the world? Moreover, one thing that made Phoenix Rouge even more certain was that Ling Xiao would definitely be the end of her plot. A son of destiny who was born to counter the sky poison? Wasn't this set up to kill her, the villain? In the end, I still can't escape? There was no place for her to stay in the thousands of miles of southern border. Now, the crime of Chen Qingshan colluding with the demon sect had been confirmed. Although Phoenix Rouge and Su Yunzi had made contributions in resisting the demon sect, they were more or less guilty of neglecting their discipline. The reason why the sect had not punished them now was because the Sea Clan was coming. Once the Battle of the Heavenly Lake was over, Su Yunzi and she would probably be punished. Now, the entire Seventh Summit had become a prison under the strict supervision of the sect. If Phoenix Rouge escaped now, she would immediately be accused of having a guilty conscience and colluding with the demon sect. At that time, she would never be able to make a name for herself. However, she could neither leave nor stay. This seemed to be a dead end. As expected of me. A villain! No matter how cautious and scheming I am, I will still die in the end. Forget it. Since things have come to this, she could only take one step at a time. She definitely could not enter the Heavenly Lake. She could only try her best to put on a good show tomorrow. Stay away from Ling Xiao. Everyone must remember. At this moment, Phoenix Rouge had never felt so tired before. On the fourth day, the sky had just brightened. Spiritual light suddenly scattered down from the sky above the immortal mystic sect. A terrifying sound of heavenly thunder resounded from the dome. Spiritual energy turned into a sea and engulfed the immortal mountain. Even the broken ancient trees and flowers in the mountain bloomed with vitality at this moment. Countless immortal mystic sect disciples woke up from their cultivation and raised their heads to look in the direction of the mountain peak. At this moment, a rainbow-colored auspicious cloud fell from the sky. There seemed to be a phenomenon within it. Divine trees broke out of the ground and immortal flowers bloomed. It was indescribably mysterious and breathtaking. The Heavenly Lake. This supreme creation that gathered the southern border's providence had finally completely appeared today. This also meant that the Sea Clan's people would descend on the immortal mystic ancient sect to compete for the final spot. Buzz. Between heaven and earth, a fishy wind suddenly blew, and the smell of blood filled the air. The longing on the faces of the immortal mystic sect disciples instantly froze. One after another, demonic silhouettes appeared in the blue sky. A majestic and ferocious aura covered the sky, almost completely suppressing the spiritual aura of the Heavenly Lake. Upon closer inspection, there were a total of 10 demonic figures. They were all strange. Behind each of the 10 demonic figures stood a young man. At the top of the immortal mystic mountain, Sect Master Helion leaned on a peach tree with a solemn expression. At this moment, the injuries on his body had not healed, and he was more cautious in his heart. If these 10 Sea Clan demons took the opportunity to attack, the immortal mystic sect would be in danger today. However, fortunately, the first divine envoy was still in the southern border. Presumably, these Sea Clan elites would not dare to be too presumptuous. Different from the Thousand Ghost Mountain and the other demon sects, although the Sea Clan had always been enemies with the human race, there had never been any major conflicts. However, the Gone Sky demon sect was destroyed by the Saint sect. This hatred was absolutely irreconcilable. Therefore, compared to the unscrupulous Guzhen and the others, although the Sea Clan was more rampant, they had a bottom line. Ha 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 ha. I haven't seen the immortal mystic sect for 100 years. How did it become like this? Even the main hall of the sect has been demolished? A Sea Clan elite sneered, causing the demons to roar with laughter. Haha, everyone, since you're here, why don't you come down and meet us? Helion Shan's expression did not change, and the aura around him was extremely vigorous. It was obvious that he did not want these Sea Clan members to see his injuries. Behind him, the Peak Master's expressions were cold, and there was a hint of anger between their brows. In every battle for the Heavenly Pool, the human race was always the weaker party. Occasionally, there would be one person who could obtain the qualifications, and that was already considered lucky. As for those Sea Clan elites, they were even more ruthless. In every battle they would fight to the death. However, this time, with Saint Ling Xiao here, it was time for the Sea Clan to pay a price. Haha. Sect Master Helion, I think that we should forget about today's battle. Every time, your human race elites are either dead or crippled. You're making it seem like the Sea Clan is bullying you. Why don't you just give these 10 people to us? It will save you a lot of trouble. 10 demonic figures descended from the sky and landed in front of the crowd, transforming into human figures. Behind the 10 of them, there were 10 young men and women who looked disdainful and arrogant. Chapter 676. Elder Sha Yun still likes to joke. Helion Shan shook his head and smiled. Although his expression was gentle, there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. In front of him, a dark-skinned bald old man laughed loudly. Suddenly, there was a wave of spiritual power around him. A blood-colored shark's shadow appeared out of thin air and pressed down on Helion Shan's head. The void instantly shattered, and endless Tao runes formed heaven and earth. Faintly, the immortal sect disciples felt a gust of wind blowing towards them. It was like a demon's giant mouth that wanted to swallow the sky. It's been 100 years. Let me see if Sect Master Hulien's cultivation has improved. The news of the demonic sect attacking the immortal sect had already spread throughout the sea region. It was said that the 4 demonic sects came together and killed hundreds of immortal sect disciples. Helion Shan did not hesitate to activate the sect protection formation in order to kill the demons and get through the crisis. Of course, with the strength of the few sea clans, they definitely did not dare to destroy the immortal sect and provoke the holy sect. However, testing Helion Shan's strength and humiliating the leader of the southern border's righteous path was also a very joyful thing. Elder Sha Yun, you're still so arrogant. Helion Shan smiled indifferently. He extended the peach branch in his hand and lightly tapped on the demon shadow. In an instant, a ray of clear light appeared and evolved into thousands of spiritual runes. The ferocious demon shadow only lasted for an instant before it completely shattered and dissipated into the wind. Helion Shan was an 8th stage martial emperor, the strongest human in the southern border. Sha Yun was only an elder of the Blood Shark clan, a 7th stage martial emperor. How could he be a match for Helion Shan? Of course, Helion Shan had the intention to intimidate Sha Yun and used almost all of his strength in the previous attack. However, the blood in his body was still surging. If he had not consumed 2 6th stage spirit recovery pills in advance to suppress the injuries in his body, he would have been exposed by the attack. However, looking at the scene before him, a trace of fear flashed across Sha Yun's dark old face. Then, he laughed. Ha ha, Sect Master Helion is still as mighty as before. I represent the Sea King of my clan to greet Sect Master. It seems that Elder Sha Yun's cultivation has improved in the past 100 years. Helion Shan smiled indifferently, as if he was not angered by Sha Yun's rudeness at all. The two of them appeared to be familiar with each other as they walked towards the front of the main hall together. There were many clans in the sea area. If it were in the past, the opportunity to fight for the Heavenly Lake would have fallen into the hands of the 10 great royal clans. However, now that the Sea Monarch had unified the sea domain and established an eternal hegemony, the Heavenly Lake's qualifications had a new owner. Every royal family could only get one chance every 100 years, so there was no need to fight for it. In other words, the Blood Shark clan was the representative of the Sea tribe to compete for the Heavenly Lake's fortune. As for the other 9 demons, they were merely vassals of the Blood Shark royal clan. Hee, Sect Master Helion, let's not be so courteous. We're all quite busy. Shall we begin? Sha Yun's sinister gaze swept across the group of immortal sex geniuses before him as the disdain in his eyes intensified. Back then, the 2 clans had agreed that the younger generation would compete fairly for the right to enter the Heavenly Lake. However, there was a difference in age between humans and demons. Demons only reached adulthood when they were 100 years old. Therefore, those under 100 years old were considered youths. As for humans, 100 years old meant that they were middle-aged. Among cultivators, they were considered seniors. Therefore, this battle was unfair to the human race in the first place. However, since they were from different clans and had different settings, no one could say that there was anything wrong with it. You couldn't possibly ask the cubs of the demon race to fight against the human race's geniuses, right? This time, the Blood Shark royal clan had brought 9 divine marquis geniuses. As for the Blood Shark young master, Sha Wuxia, he was a peerless monster of a divine marquis 6th stage. He was considered one of the top in the sea region. As for the human race, only 3 of them had reached the divine marquis realm, and most of them were 1st or 2nd stage divine marquis. The remaining few were all 1st stage divine generals. Wasn't this going to wipe them all out? In the battle for the Heavenly Lake, the 10 battles between the 2 clans were not carried out by drawing lot. Instead, they would take turns to go up the stage and send their own geniuses to fight against the enemy. As such, the immortal mystic sect had no chance of winning. In fact, no one would win. The reason why the Ocean Emperor wanted to compete with the human race for the Heavenly Lake's fortune was one of the reasons. Secondly, every 100 years, a round of southern borders human geniuses would be killed. As such, after a few 100 years, the human race would not be a match for the Sea Tribe. In the long run, the fate of the human race would definitely decline. Even if the Saint sect stood behind the immortal mystic sect, the Sea Tribe would eventually become the only ruler of the southern border. Haha, Elder Shah has just arrived. Why don't you have a cup of tea first? Helian Shan's eyes were calm, but he was a little nervous, because the saint had not appeared from the beginning to the end. At the crucial moment, the saint actually dropped the ball. Originally, Helian Shan still hoped that Ling Xiao would be able to show his prowess in this battle and boost the morale of the human race. But now, it seemed like it was just wishful thinking. Don't you know that the geniuses of the demon race don't like to drink tea? We only like to drink blood? Sha Yun sneered and his eyes were filled with a bone-piercing fierceness. Humph. Since Elder Shah is so impatient, then let's start. Who will go first? Helian Shan sighed softly. With a wave of his hand, a tall and straight figure stepped out from the crowd of immortal sect disciples and stood on the battle platform. I'll go first. Below the stage, Phoenix Rouge's beautiful eyes narrowed. Her footsteps stopped abruptly. Someone else beat me to it again. I just want to use this stage to put on a good show. Is it so difficult? Senior Brother Shangguan. Show the prowess of the human race. Senior Brother is mighty and invincible. Go. Sha Yun turned around and sat on the golden chair in front of the palace. He looked at the excited human disciples and the young man on the stage with a playful gaze. A second-grade divine marquis could be considered a genius among the human race. However, the weakest among the Sea Tribe was a third-grade divine marquis. Tell me, what do you have to fight with the human race? 100 years ago, the human race had one person who won. But this time, the human race would become a laughingstock. I'll fight him. A burly figure walked out from the crowd. His face was full of beard, fat head, and big ears. A pair of sharp teeth could be seen outside of his mouth. He looked extremely ferocious. He was actually a 4th-grade divine marquis genius. Xiangba, remember, go easy on him. Don't hurt the harmony between the human race and the demon race. Sha Yun sneered. However, his tone carried a trace of gloom. Yes, Elder. Xiangba chuckled and stepped forward. He didn't waste any time. Demonic aura surged from his body as he threw a punch. Boom! Space crumbled, and the faint silhouette of a sea demon appeared behind Xiangba. Terrifying demonic might surged like a sea of stars. A pitch-black fist fell from the sky, piercing through the void and heading for the immortal sect disciple's head. Evil demon, die. The immortal sect disciple was the first disciple of the first peak and a direct disciple of Helian Mountain. His name was Shangguan Yu. He came to the stage today to show the righteous side, but when faced with Xiang Ba's punch, he felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. The ear-piercing hum of a sword suddenly resounded. Clear light flowed between heaven and earth. However, before Shangguan Yu could strike with his immortal sword, Xiang Ba's figure, which had been 70 feet away, suddenly appeared a meter away from him. The Sea Region genius's eyes were filled with mockery. Shangguan Yu's face instantly paled. Chapter 677. Puqi. Suddenly, a wisp of blood energy filled the air. The entire immortal mystic peak fell into an oppressive atmosphere. Everyone looked at the fist that pierced through Shangguan Yu's back with fear in their eyes. Gulp. Especially the human prodigy who was excited and looking forward to showing off today. He swallowed his saliva and his face turned completely pale. He died just like that? With one punch? Shangguan Yu was originally an outstanding talent of the immortal mystic sect. He was even famous in the southern region. He was one of the people who had high hopes for the Heavenly Lake battle. But now, he was easily killed by a prodigy of the ocean tribe with one punch. Suddenly, the remaining 8 disciples felt a gust of cold air rising from the soles of their feet. In the blink of an eye, it reached the top of their heads. Oh no! It felt like they were going to die. Ants! Xiang Ba slowly retracted his fist and kicked Shangguan Yu's corpse off the fighting ring. He looked at the other prodigies provocatively. Haha, young people are so hot-tempered. Didn't I say not to kill indiscriminately? Sha Yun smiled eerily and waved at the person beside him. You can go now. Yes, Elder. Another prodigy of the ocean tribe stepped onto the fighting ring. His scales shone brightly. Even his face was covered with white scales. He looked very strange. In his hand, a 3-pronged black halberd shone coldly, intimidating everyone. Yin Xiao from the Silver Scale Tribe. Please enlighten me. A 4th-grade divine marquis. Another tough nut to crack. At this time, the remaining 8 disciples all had their heads lowered or turned to look at the distant sky, as if they were deep in thought, as if they had something on their minds. Unexpectedly, no one dared to go up the stage to accept the challenge. Seeing this, Helian Shan's expression turned gloomy. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Phoenix Rouge, who was in a hurry to step onto the fighting ring, hesitated. Originally, she wanted to pretend that she was no match for Shangguan Yu and admit defeat. However, the Ocean Tribe seemed to think that she would die if she lost. It didn't seem appropriate to surrender in a fight that involved the dignity of the 2 tribes, right? Chen Qingshan had run away, and this old lady was already the number 1 suspect for colluding with the demon sect. If she were to join the enemy now, even if she was lucky enough to survive, wouldn't she be killed by the old sect master? Therefore, Phoenix Rouge decided that she would fight against the weakest genius of the Sea Clan. After all, the bigger the demons, the stronger they were. Immortal Mystic Sect. No one dared to accept the challenge? Ha 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 ha. I say, Sect Master Helion, I've already said that we should cancel the competition and give the 10 spots to my oceanic race. This will save everyone a lot of time. Sha Yun sneered as his expression was filled with disdain. Humph. Isn't Elder Sha Yun being too conceited? To be honest, Helian Shan felt a little embarrassed in his heart. We don't dare to ask what the saint is doing, and we don't dare to care. Yet, these southern border prodigies were all so obedient? Wouldn't he be slapping him in the face in front of everyone? Cough cough. Helian Shan coughed softly. Su Yunzi, who was standing beside him, narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Phoenix Rouge. Rouge, you'll go for this battle. I'll go. Phoenix Rouge was stunned. Her beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. Old bastard! You don't want to be my master anymore, do you? Why are you in such a hurry to send me to my death? Do you think I can do it or you can? You want me to fight against a divine marquis? F***K. Actually, Su Yunzi was also feeling bitter. Back then, when the demon sect attacked the mountain, several hundred disciples of the immortal mystic sect died. More importantly, among the 10 winners of the competition, 4 of them were immortal mystic sect disciples. However, one of them ran away and another died. Only Phoenix Rouge and Shangguan Yu were left. The latter was also killed. Apart from Ling Xiao, among the 8 remaining disciples, only Phoenix Rouge was from the immortal mystic sect. In such an awkward situation, if a disciple of the Southern Border's righteous path didn't go, who would? What does it mean to be the leader of the righteous path? Of course, you have to be the leader of the righteous path. Otherwise, my saint's sect won't let you be the leader of the righteous path. Master? Feng Rouge was clearly a little hesitant, and Su Yunzi glared at her fiercely, instantly stopping her from saying what she wanted to say. I'll go, okay? In the end, Phoenix Rouge gritted her teeth and walked toward the fighting stage. However, each step seemed to be a little bumpy. Realm, Heavenly Hall. Ling Xiao sat cross-legged. Demonic intent was surging around him, covering the sky. At this moment, there was a mysterious fluctuation of divine power on his body. This fluctuation didn't seem to come from him. It was more like the power of an evil treasure. Buzz. At the same time, a buzzing sound was heard in Ling Xiao's soul sea. The primordial mystic gold that was shrouded in demonic intent was finally refined into light by the demonic blade and absorbed into the blade. An extremely cold aura instantly filled the entire soul sea. The primordial ancestral symbol and primordial Pangu stone, the 2 supreme treasures of heaven and earth, emitted a dazzling divine light at the same time, completely suppressing the ferocious aura. At this moment, a strange golden pattern appeared on the primordial demonic blade and turned into a line that ran through the blade. A majestic demonic intent surged into the sky, mixed with an inexplicable emotion. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and immersed himself in the demonic intent. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed. At this moment, he seemed to have appeared in an unfamiliar space. In front of him was a majestic black hall. There weren't many carvings around the hall. In front of the hall, a stalwart figure stood with his hands behind his back. In his hand, the primordial demonic blade fell to the ground. A wisp of blood flowed along the blade to the ground. Buzz! 4 divine shadows descended from the sky. There was a kind of vast fluctuation that Ling Xiao couldn't understand. Dazzling divine light illuminated the sky. Endless Tao patterns formed an array that connected the myriad of worlds and contained the intent to destroy all world. But, facing the siege of 4 people, the demonic shadow didn't panic at all. However, there seemed to be an indescribable sadness in the depths of his eyes. Then, just as the 4 divine shadows descended, the demonic shadow suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Xiao. Watch carefully. The second move of the 9 moves of the Taigu, evil god. Boom! A wisp of black light seemed to have penetrated through the ancient times. 4 divine treasures also fell from the hands of the 4 divine shadows. Heaven and earth evolved into a myriad of phenomena. Golden dragons soared into the sky, immortal phoenixes cried, divine towers floated, and immortal mountains collapsed. The void began to collapse. The sun and moon sank into the world. There was no more light in the world. An evil shadow vaguely swept out with the blade, destroying everything and suppressing all worlds. Boom! Heaven and earth seemed to be unable to bear the power of the blade and shattered instantly. The 4 divine shadows retreated at the same time and appeared 10,000 miles away. Clang! In the end, the 5 divine treasures collided with each other. It was as if a bell from outer space rang in the ears. It also shattered all the illusions in front of him. Ling Xiao opened his eyes in a daze. Looking at the primordial demonic blade in his hand, his eyes trembled. There was an indescribable strangeness in his heart. Chapter 678. Ling Xiao already knew that the sky demon had died at the hands of the 4 gods. However, as the seal of the immemorial demon blade gradually opened, the scene Ling Xiao saw was somewhat strange. With the sky demon's strength, he was already immortal and indestructible. Even that slash just now was enough to split heaven and earth and contend against the four gods. Moreover, this was only the second move of the immemorial 9 move. Although Ling Xiao hadn't seen the remaining 7 moves, he could imagine their power. Then, how did he die? In other words, Ling Xiao thought that the four gods might be able to contend against the sky demon if they joined forces. However, it was obviously not enough to kill him. Then, who killed the sky demon? Could it be that there was an even more terrifying existence after the four gods? As a transmigrator, Ling Xiao never fully believed in the so-called secrets of heaven and earth. What the world knew was mostly one-sided. But an existence beyond the four gods, just thinking about it made Ling Xiao feel an inexplicable pressure. Moreover, what puzzled Ling Xiao even more was that every time the seal of the immemorial demon blade was broken, he could see the sky demon's true body, and the sky demon seemed to be able to detect him. If the body and spirit he transmigrated to were both the sky demon's reincarnation, why did he feel like a bystander? Suddenly, Ling Xiao felt that there was a big hand above his head that was wantonly playing with the fate of the world. He couldn't see clearly, couldn't guess, and couldn't escape. Master! Xiaopa walked over from the side and looked at the demon blade in Ling Xiao's hand with fear. Just now, he could clearly feel a wisp of power emanating from the saber. Just a wisp of power almost caused the entire realm to collapse. Okay, let's go. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently and looked at the sky in the distance. The fog in the Xingzhou gradually dispersed, but the fog in this world rushed towards him again. However, no matter what, his Tao should not be restricted by anyone. Heaven and earth could be slaughtered, and time could be reversed. No one can cut off my path to immortality. 3 days had passed. It was time to go out and collect the greatest fortune of immortal mystic sect. However, just as Ling Xiao's figure appeared in the sleeping quarters at the top of the mountain, Hua Hua's face flashed with a look of relief. Young master, you're finally back. Yes. Someone from the oceanic race is here? Ling Xiao furrowed his brows. Earlier, he had been immersed in the primordial devil blade and had wasted some time. Looking at Floey's current appearance, the competition had probably already begun. Yes, the Saint's son had already started. Moreover, the sea race was running rampant. They had killed an immortal sect disciple the moment they arrived. If you don't show up, Miss Ru Guo is going to die. Floey sighed as her eyes flickered with pity. She didn't really care about the deaths of a few immortal sect disciples. Phoenix Rouge's celestial beauty was truly peerless. If such a beautiful woman died, wouldn't it be a pity? She wouldn't be able to obtain this poison fairy, but it would be good for the young master to obtain her. At that time, the 3 of them would have fun together. That would be a wonderful thing. Oh? She won't die. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. He didn't seem to be panicking at all. She was the Lady of Destiny with 5,000 Providence points and a person who had transmigrated to this world. How could she be easily killed by those rotten fish and shrimps of the oceanic race? Of course, Phoenix Rouge had already determined that he was the villain. Otherwise, she wouldn't have schemed against him. Thus, Ling Xiao wouldn't let her discover the fact that he was the Lady of Destiny. Aren't you a coward? Then I'll let you know that there are dangers everywhere in this world. Only by my side is the safest. Women were transmigrated models. What did they look for in a partner? Of course, it was to be handsome and rich. They also had to be given a sufficient sense of security. If the first 2 conditions couldn't be met, then please ignore the last one. I, Ling Xiao, am the most handsome person in the 9 heavens. I'm also the saint of the saint sect. I'm definitely the most handsome person in the other world. Phoenix Rouge was afraid that her poison body would be exposed and she wouldn't be tolerated by the world. She would be killed by Ling Xiao, Wei Guangjing. But, Miss Phoenix, I'm not Wei Guangjing. I'll make her feel despair first, then I'll give her sincerity and help her block all the hostility in the world. Do you think she'll be so touched that her eyes and white hair will be wet? Saint, this is, beside Huahua. Qin Chu looked at Xiao Ping in surprise. At this moment, he saw that this destiny of the upper realm had an arrogant expression on his face. He stood behind Ling Xiao with his hands behind his back. His expression was rarely serious. What a joke! Although he didn't know where this world was in the azure sky world, the aura of these people in front of him was too weak, right? What realm were they in? Divine Overlord? F***CK. I am. This is my servant. Before Xiao Popper could finish, Ling Xiao had already said coldly. Now, this Lady of Destiny was completely under Ling Xiao's control. As for the reason why he brought her with him, haha, look, my servants are all people of destiny. You're saying that I'm a demon? Do you believe that yourself? Besides, this Xiao Popper's luck is so high. Who knows, he might encounter some good fortune in this world. Oh, I'm not greedy for your luck. I just think that you've been suppressed for more than 400 years. You must desire freedom. Young master. Righteousness. Xiao Popper's expression froze. Then, a bright smile appeared on his face. That's right. I'm the Lord's servant. The most loyal kind. Hey, get up. No one is allowed to stand within 3 feet of young master. Otherwise, I'll think that you have ulterior motives and kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Popper's emperor's aura spread out. Instantly, Qin Chu's expression froze. God Emperor! This white, fat, and wretched fatty was actually the God Emperor. Looking at his appearance, he was at most in his 20s, right? He was so terrifying. No wonder the masters always said that there was always a higher immortal and a world beyond the heavens. One must not be complacent. It turns out that I, Qin Chu, am really a piece of trash. Not to mention the Saint Ling Xiao's invincible might, even his servant was so heaven-defying. What's there to say, Lord Ling Xiao? Awesome. What? How did it involve young master? The God Emperor monster was willing to be a servant. Don't you think young master is awesome? As expected, monstrous people were always like-minded. Now it seems that my plan to become friends with Lord Ling Xiao is really wishful thinking? Then is it too late to consider becoming his servant? Beep. The destined child has the intention to submit. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Oh! Ling Xiao looked at Qin Chu meaningfully. So fast. This immortal mystic sect hasn't even gone down yet, and you're going to play yourself to death? See, you only have talent and luck, but you never come out. What's the use of Dior? It wasn't that the reclusive heavens will wasn't weak. His strength was strong, but his temperament was too naive and childish. Of course, if he hadn't met Ling Xiao, he might have also pushed all the way and become the ruler of the world. He tempered his temperament through tribulations, and in the end, his Tao heart was firm and complete, and he could look down on all eternity. Moreover, he had 6 great demons protecting him. However, it was a pity. Those 6 demons probably didn't expect that as soon as Qin Chu came out, he would encounter a villain who could plunder luck. They also didn't expect that on the surface, this villain was the greatest righteous person in the Xingzhou. F***CK. Chapter 679. Let's go. It's about time. Ling Xiao looked at Qin Chu meaningfully. This leak was basically useless. He was still alive, not because Ling Xiao was merciful, but the disciple of the 6 demons had a heart of justice. It was a pity that such a good scapegoat died so easily. Furthermore, Ling Xiao always felt that the first divine emissary was too mysterious. His voice had an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Therefore, Ling Xiao planned to ask him not to appear in the human territory for the time being. With Ling Xiao's current strength, it would be difficult to kill a ninth-grade divine emperor. It was not reliable to rely on the oceanic tribe. Ling Xiao decided to send a true demon over to delay the first divine emissary. Qin Chu was a good choice. Even when Ling Xiao and the others appeared at the top of the main hall, Feng Rouge still had not walked up to the fighting ring. At this time, the destined woman's face was pale, and there were sweat stains on her hair. Obviously, Feng Rouge was extremely anxious right now. Human, do you not dare to fight me, Yin Xiao? Above the arena, Yin Xiao looked disdainful, and the halberd in his hand glowed. Rouge, come to the arena quickly! Su Yunzi shouted, his eyes full of bitterness. In these few days, he had lost all his face because of these two disciples. Oh! Phoenix Rouge gritted her teeth, looking sad and angry. The situation was very dangerous. If she did not expose her poisonous body, she would die in the arena today. But if she exposed it, would her fate be worse than death? Damn! This was a dead end. Hee. Woman, if you don't want to fight, kneel down and kowtow to me. After the fortune in Heavenly Lake is over, come back to the sea with me for 2 days and I'll spare your life. How about that? Yin Xiao looked up and down Phoenix Rouge. Although the heavenly poison woman was wearing a veil, it could not hide her beauty. Swish. However, just as Phoenix Rouge's foot landed on the battle platform, the sound of a sword suddenly resounded in the air. Subsequently, everyone saw a strand of clear light flash by leisurely, whereas the smile on the corners of Yin Zhao's mouth hadn't dispersed when it completely froze. Then, his body suddenly split open neatly. Blood and internal organs spilled all over the ground. He had actually revealed his true form. A shuttle-shaped silver fish that was several meters long. Gulp. The entire square suddenly fell into a dead silence. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the sky. At that moment, a golden sun was shining brightly above the battle platform. It was blinding and contained a divine aura. Vaguely, there seemed to be a white-clothed figure standing before the golden sun with his hands behind his back. Thousands of visions flashed around the young man. As he stepped forward, green lotuses of the great path appeared beneath his feet. There was no light in the world, and all the Taoist rhymes gathered in one person. Ling Xiao stepped forward slowly. His white robe was like an immortal's, and his handsome face seemed to contain a trace of coldness. Behind him, Ling Xiao held a golden magic mirror in his hand and desperately urged all the spiritual energy in his body to make the magic mirror shine brightly. It made Ling Xiao's figure look even more majestic and tall in contrast. Furthermore, at that moment, in the direction of the oceanic tribe, a few young female prodigies' beautiful eyes were slightly focused, revealing a trace of infatuation. What a peerless young master! Although he was from the human tribe and his body was probably weaker, but he should be able to withstand it by eating more elixirs. Lord Ling Xiao, Phoenix Rouge's eyes flashed with a trace of amazement. She was so emotional that tears almost flowed from the corner of her mouth. So handsome! No, I'm so touched. It's the second time. This was already the second time that Ling Xiao had appeared at a critical moment and blocked a fatal danger for her. If it wasn't for the fact that she was born with a poisonous body, Phoenix Rouge would have thought that she was lucky right now. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you disturb the martial arts competition between the human tribe and the oceanic tribe? Sha Yun stood up angrily, and the demonic aura around him was surging. Behind him, the elder of the Silver Howl clan was also full of anger. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in the immortal mystic ancient sect, and that the young man looked a little awesome, he would have already attacked Ling Xiao. So what? Ling Xiao's expression was indifferent. He only calmly glanced at Sha Yun, and the soul light in his eyes flickered, as if there was an invisible great force rushing out. Sha Yun only felt his soul sea tremble, and a trace of fear inexplicably emerged from the bottom of his heart. But how is this possible? A young man from the human tribe actually made me feel fear with just a glance? This kind of fear didn't come from the suppression of cultivation. It was more like a kind of force, a kind of Tao force that had been at the top of the sky for a long time, and had the same origin as the heaven and earth. Just a mere rotten fish and shrimps. How dare you be presumptuous in my human tribe? Why? Has my sacred sect not made a move for too long? Ling Zhao's figure descended from the sky and stood in front of Phoenix Rouge. His originally cold and handsome face suddenly bloomed with a trace of gentleness. Rouge, I've frightened you. You scared me? Phoenix Rouge was stunned, and a trace of redness appeared on her charming face. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me again. But what can I do? Who asked Lord Ling Xiao to be so handsome? Who can stand this kind of peerlessly cold and arrogant face when he suddenly smiles at you? I just like handsome people, handsome people. What's wrong with that? To tell you the truth, if I wasn't a villain, I would have pushed him down from the first day I met him. No, I must restrain myself. A young man abstains from lecherous acts. His dog life is more important. Sacred sect? Sha Yun's expression turned serious, and a trace of contemplation flickered in his eyes. He knew that the saint of the sacred sect had arrived at the southern border. Looking at this young man's appearance, he had a celestial aura and a natural Tao temperament. He was most likely the saint of the sacred sect. Sect Master Helion, your human clan killed my clan's young lord. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? The elder of the Silver Howl clan clenched his fists. Even though he had already guessed Ling Zhao's identity, he still felt unreconciled. Yes, I don't dare to confront that young man, Bibi. Can I confront the sect master of the celestial mystic sect, Bibi? My clan's young lord was extremely talented and should have led our clan to dominate the sea region. How could he be killed? Hua Hua, keep this silver fish's corpse and make some ice. Once it's frozen, we can cut it into slices at night. Ling Xiao coldly glanced at the elder of the Silver Scale clan. You deserve to die for provoking my sacred sect's dignity. As soon as Ling Xiao finished speaking, a figure suddenly swept out from behind him. The ancient sword in the figure's hand was suddenly unsheathed, releasing thousands of rays of profound light. The glaring divine light covered the sky and pierced through the ancient times. It seemed to contain a wisp of supreme domineering aura that surpassed the category of Tao artifacts. Human, how arrogant! The elder of the Silver Scale clan was a third-stage god emperor. Although he was surprised that this person was already a god emperor at such a young age, his eyes were still filled with bloodthirsty killing intent. However, just as the divine light around him was blooming and the demonic aura was spreading, the scene in front of him suddenly paused for an instant. It was precisely at this instant that the ancient sword in Xiao Po's hand broke through the sky and appeared half a chi away from the elder's glabella. At this moment, the heavens and earth were silent. Even Sha Yun and Helion Shan, who were 7th and 8th stage god emperors, had intense fear in their eyes. Chapter 680. Pucci. Xiao Ping slashed out with a blade, instantly penetrating that Silver Scale elder's head. Even at this moment, the elder's eyes were still filled with indescribable shock. No. The saint of the sacred sect was powerful enough to kill my young master with one strike. How could a random young man behind him kill him with one strike? Of course, until his death, the elder never thought that the wretched young man in front of him was from the upper realm. Even the ancient blade in his hand was a heavenly treasure. Moreover, Xiao Tong had the mandate of heaven and had comprehended a supreme Tao law like time. It was easy for him to kill enemies of a higher realm. Actually, at this moment, Xiao Tong was somewhat surprised. It shouldn't be. Where was this place in the Azure world? Why were all of them so weak? He didn't even use his full strength. He only used a wisp of Tao Law true intent to kill this whining old man? Did I become powerful after being suppressed for 400 years? Or was this world just a small realm under the azure sky world? But, no matter what, it was time to show off again. Humph! A stinky fish dares to question my master. Xiao Tong floated down with one hand holding the blade and the other behind his back. He looked like an otherworldly expert. Hiss! Around the battle stage, many immortal sect disciples and Sea Clan geniuses sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Sha Yun, Helian Shan and the other Emperor God experts had a tinge of shock in their eyes. Killing a God Emperor with a swing of the blade? God Emperor cultivation? When did such a talented young God Emperor appear in the Xingzhou? Also, most importantly, what did he call Ling Xiao? Master? F***ck. A young God Emperor with unparalleled talent was willing to be a slave and call Ling Xiao master? Who else? Who dares to question my master? Xiao Tong stood in front of the Sea Clan members. The ancient blade in his hand shone with a cold light. It was as if he could hold back 10,000 people alone. This is the strength of the saint's servant. Ridiculous. I actually wanted to be the saint's confidant. Now, it seems that I don't even have the right to be his servant. Suddenly, Qin Chu felt a strong sense of inferiority. Beep, the child of destiny's Dao heart is about to collapse. Congratulations to host for plundering 300 luck points and 3,000 villain points. The pitiful Tianming, who had lived in seclusion from the world, had been played by Ling Xiao before he had even seen the vastness of this world. Haha, Elder Sha Yun, let me introduce you. This is the holy son of our sacred sect, Holy Son Ling Xiao. Helian Shan smiled indifferently when he saw this scene, yet there was an indescribable feeling of comfort in his heart. As expected of the Holy Son, his appearance instantly slapped the faces of the oceanic species. Look at that Sha Yun, his face has turned black from anger. Weren't you very arrogant earlier? Why did it wither now? Humph. Greetings, Lord Saint's son. Before Sha Yun could finish his sentence, the ancient saber in Xiao Tong's hand emitted a godly glow once again, forcing him to swallow the words he was about to say. He didn't think much of a first-grade divine emperor. However, the instant he killed Elder Enlin just now, it was truly, extremely strange. Even with his strength, he couldn't see clearly how this young man appeared in front of the Silver Scale Elder out of thin air. Moreover, the holy son of the sacred sect wasn't someone he could offend. Sha Yun could look down on the southern border's #1 human emperor, Helian Shan, but even if he had 10 times the guts, he wouldn't dare to provoke the sacred sect. Even the Ocean Emperor was extremely wary of this force. Holy Son, what an immortal appearance! Sha Yun smiled embarrassedly and sat back on the chair. The Silver Scale clan was merely a vassal of the Blood Shark clan. The death of a young master and an elder wasn't a big deal. Rouge wins this round. Does anyone have any objections? Ling Xiao looked indifferent as he turned to look at the group of oceanic species experts. Why? Among the crowd, there was another oceanic species expert who wanted to perform. However, before he could take a step forward, he felt a chill on his neck and his head rolled to the side. No objections. Sha Yun's eyes turned cold, but he didn't dare to say anything. Do I dare to have any objections? This servant of the Holy Sun was so ruthless. He killed one person with one slash and didn't even ask anyone to open their mouth. F***ck. What's wrong with this world? Shouldn't it be the oceanic species that's rampant and bloodthirsty to intimidate the human race? Why was there something wrong with the plot? However, at this moment, Phoenix Rouge's pretty face didn't have a trace of joy. Instead, there was a hint of panic. F***ck. Holy Son, I don't want to go to the heavenly lake. I know you're doing this for me. Can you not always make your own decisions? It was very strange. Phoenix Rouge felt that her life seemed to be pushed into the abyss by an invisible hand. Even if she tried her best to resist, It was useless. As expected, as long as the person of destiny was involved in the karma, the villain wouldn't have a good ending. However, what can I do? I can't refuse in front of everyone and say that I don't want this victory. If that's the case, wouldn't I have to go up on the stage and die? F***ck. Alright, since there are no objections, let's continue the battle. Ling Zhao's voice was indifferent. However, at this moment, he didn't leave the fighting stage at all. I see that all of you are very eager to fight. Why don't all of you come at me together? If I win, the oceanic species get lost. If I lose, all 10 people from the heavenly lake will belong to the oceanic species. As soon as Ling Xiao finished speaking, the people from the oceanic species and the oceanic species were shocked. In particular, the human prodigies who were standing below the fighting stage almost knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the Holy Sun out of excitement. The Holy Sun was righteous. They were only here to make up the numbers. Once they went up on the stage, they would definitely be killed. However, Ling Xiao, the Holy Sun, wanted to fight against the entire oceanic species by himself. He wanted to fight against 7 people by himself. 1 against 7. Do you understand? What? Countless prodigies from the oceanic species were stunned. Their eyes flashed fiercely. This was an insult. Ling Xiao was humiliating the oceanic species. Although I admit that you are very strong and very handsome, how could we, the prodigies from the oceanic species, be cowards? Moreover, those who were able to stand on the peak of the immortal mystic mountain were all famous prodigies of the oceanic species. When had they ever suffered such grievances? Elder, please let us fight. Fight. I don't believe that the 7 of us are not a match for the Holy Sun of the oceanic species. In front of everyone, Sha Yun's expression changed a few times. The Holy Sun of the sacred sect was indeed a terrifying identity. Even his servants were exceptional prodigies. However, if he didn't accept the challenge, wouldn't he be embarrassing the entire oceanic species? Moreover, more importantly, Sha Yun had a vague feeling that he was hallucinating. If he dared to say no, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to leave the immortal mystic mountain. Since the Holy Sun is so confident, Wuxia, you and the other 6 prodigies will have a taste of the Holy Sun's prowess. In the end, Sha Yun said in a deep voice. Behind him, the 7 prodigies no longer suppressed their auras. Each of them released a demonic radiance and landed on the fighting stage like the scorching sun in the sky. Haha, what a showy show. If all of you are the sun, then I, Ling Xiao, am Ho-E. Today, I will let all of you understand what it means to be invincible. Chapter 681. Holy Sun Ling Xiao, show us your prowess. The leader of the 7 was a young man in black armor. His eyes were gloomy and he was surrounded by a demonic aura. He was a 6th grade divine overlord prodigy. Sha Wuxia's heart was also filled with hatred. Originally, he had planned to use this battle to make a name for himself in the sea region. But now, it seemed like his glory had been stolen by the young man in front of him. However, it did not matter. The Holy Sun of the sacred sect was the benchmark of the human prodigies. As long as he killed him, he, Sha Yun, would be the little hero of the sea tribe in the future. Please begin your performance. Ling Xiao looked at the group of weaklings in front of him coldly. 1 6th grade divine overlord, 2 5th grade divine overlords and 4 3rd and 4th grade divine overlord. Ling Xiao did not even need to use his sword to kill the 7 of them. Of course, the reason why he wanted to fight the 7 of them alone was not purely to show off. Villains, why are you showing off? Be careful. The reason why he did so was to ensure that only the human prodigies would enter the heavenly lake. In this way, the upcoming show would attract the wrath of the human forces. After all, the sea tribe was the enemy of the human race. Even if the sea tribe prodigies all died in the immortal mystic ancient sect, it would only attract the hatred of the sea tribe experts. For the human race, it would be a great achievement. This went against his original intention. It was enough to have a representative of the sea tribe enter the heavenly lake. At that time, he would give this fellow transmigrator a great surprise. Humph! Everyone, follow me and let this Lord Holy Sun experience the glory of our oceanic race's outstanding talent. Sha Wusha shouted coldly. The demonic aura around him condensed into a faint shadow of a blood shark. The remaining 6 people also released their demonic aura, stirring up the wind and clouds. Endless spiritual aura was about to shatter the sky. Even a divine king expert would have to retreat when facing the 7 of them. Seeing this, many elders and disciples in the immortal mystic ancient sect were shocked. However, just as Ling Zhao's eyes were clear and he raised his hand gently, a loud sword chime suddenly resounded in the sky. Buzz! In an instant, the demonic cloud shattered. There was an extreme sharpness that turned into a sharp edge that cut through the sky. An ancient sword surrounded by clear light fell from the sky and stabbed into the fighting ring. In the next moment, an extremely cold and low voice suddenly resounded through the world. How dare a few rotten fish and shrimps act so presumptuously? When he heard the voice, Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly. When he raised his head to look again, the figure of a youth in black had already stepped over from the void. His snow-white hair fluttered in the wind, and his handsome face had a coldness that made one's heart palpitate. The glittering clear light couldn't hide the pride and arrogance of his sword bones. His divine might was unparalleled, but it was not even half as sharp as the sharpness in his eyes. Furthermore, with every step he took, the sound of the Tao resonated in the sky. The 7-colored immortal aura transformed into a shadow that pierced through the clouds like a peerless sword. The entire immortal mystic sect had tens of thousands of swords humming in unison. Sword Tao was unparalleled. Even Helion Shan and the other God-Emperor experts were affected by this terrifying heavenly might. They could only feel their bodies turning cold, as if they were being sliced by sharp blades. Buzz! Countless sword cultivators tried their best to restrain the immortal swords in their hands, fearing that their spirit treasures would break out of their sheaths and fly towards the youth in the next second. What kind of sword talent and cultivation was this? Throughout the history of the Xingzhou state, there were countless outstanding and talented cultivators. But who could cultivate the sword Tao to such a level at the age of 16 or 17? A young sword immortal with an undefeatable aura. When did such a monstrous person appear in the Xingzhou state? Until the white-haired youth descended from the sky and landed in front of Ling Xiao. In the next moment, a terrifying scene appeared. He suddenly bowed deeply towards Ling Xiao, and a touch of gentleness and shyness appeared on his cold and icy face. "Brother, I'm here." "Not bad." Ling Xiao smiled faintly. The moment he saw the ancient stone sword, he knew Ling Tian was here. However, even though he had seen this youth's talent with his own eyes, he was still shocked by his cultivation at this moment. 6,000 providence points, perfected sword Tao, 7th grade divine lord. It was obvious that in this short half a year, Ling Tian's cultivation had undergone an earth-shattering change. At the peak of the sword Tao, there was no distraction. With the 3,000 divine swords as his tribulation and the ancient sword's wish as his experience, this good-for-nothing Ling people had finally reached the peak of the great Tao. Perfected Tao laws were the shackles of this world, and even God-emperors would find it difficult to reach them. Even Ling Xiao would find it difficult to perfect all the Taos without relying on the system. But Ling Tian did it. Another follower of Saint Ling Xiao? This is too terrifying. The talent of a sword immortal. Our human race will prosper. Countless elders of the immortal sects exclaimed. Even Qin Chu, the monstrous person who inherited the sword demon orthodoxy, was shocked by Ling Tian's talent in the sword Tao. Too powerful. The suppression from the sword intent was even more terrifying than the suppression from cultivation. In fact, Qin Chu had a vague feeling that this youth's sword was unstoppable in the world. One extreme was to kill immortals with a wave of his hand. Brother, I'm here. So, let me kill 10,000 enemies for you. Ling Tian's lips curled into a bright smile. A sword cultivator like him shouldn't have such feelings. However, inexplicably, he felt warm when he saw Ling Xiao. It was as if nothing in the world could compare to what he said just now. Ling Xiao had never praised him since he was young. Every time he achieved something, he would be reprimanded by his brother. Ling Tian was young back then, so he didn't understand the meaning behind it. But now, it seemed that this was his deep love for him. Without my brother, how could I reach the peak of the sword Dao? Brother, I'm sorry. Even if you've forgiven me, I can't forgive myself. You've shouldered too much for me. Now I'm here. No one in this world can humiliate you anymore. No, even if the world humiliates you, I'll slaughter the heavens, kill the 6 realms, and respect you. Brother, let me stand in front of you and block the coldness of this world for you. This, Sect Master Helion, isn't this against the rules? How can you humans be so fickle? How can you change the rules of the competition so easily? Sha Yun furrowed his brows. Suddenly, he felt regretful. The competition for the Heavenly Lake didn't seem to be a fortune for the Blood Shark clan. It seemed more like a calamity? I don't care about the competition for the Heavenly Lake. If you want to fight my brother, you'll have to fight me first. Ling Tian clenched his hand and the immortal extermination sword rose from the ground and floated in the sky. Above the sword, the immortal aura was vast and the spiritual sun shone brightly. There was a faint immortal shadow standing in the sky. Arrogant humans, do you really think we're afraid of you? Sha Wuxia's eyes were bloodshot and his face was completely ferocious. Humiliation. This was a complete humiliation. First, it was Ling Xiao. Now, it was this young man. Although the white-haired young man's attainment in the sword Dao was shocking, Sha Wuxia could clearly feel that his cultivation base was still at the first divine overlord realm. In other words, a divine overlord fighting 7 divine overlords? This wasn't arrogance. This was simply courting death. Follow me. Today I'll bear witness for the Sea Clan. Chapter 682. At the peak of the immortal mystic mountain, in front of the main hall. At this moment, all the immortal mystic disciples and the youths of the 8 tribes were stunned. Especially on the battle platform, 2 peerless figures, one white and one black, could be called immortals. Ling Zhao's white clothes and black hair fluttered like an immortal. Ling Tian's black clothes and white hair made him look like a demon. The same immortal appearance and the same otherworldly temperament. The 2 of them stood side by side and were inexplicably compatible. They were like the 2 extremes of life and death, yin and yang on the other side, heaven and earth reflecting. As expected, in this world, handsome men belong to another man. Many geniuses clenched their fists, their faces flushed red, and their eyes were filled with tears. Young masters should only exist in the heavens. Why did they fall to this world? What's more, there were 2 of them. Damn. What can I do? I just have no resistance. Even if the 2 young masters don't love me, I don't want them to belong to any woman. Young masters, I wish you 2 to be together. Also, I don't want to cry, but I have to shed something to prove that I'm true to you. I've met my match. Xiao Bo stood in front of the crowd, his eyes flashing with seriousness. Damn. It wasn't that Ling Tian's cultivation had shocked him, but this white-haired youth is actually better at licking than me? Although he didn't say much, every word was deeply engraved and contained deep affection. Oh no. I feel that my status as the most popular person in the Lord's world is being threatened. But on second thought, Xiao Bo felt somewhat relieved. This youth's style is obviously different from mine. Perhaps the Lord likes the way I lick him more? Young master, not far away from him, Qin Chu's expression was miserable. His fists were clenched tightly, and his eyes were filled with deep powerlessness. Another peerless person appeared beside Lord Ling Xiao. Moreover, looking at his appearance, it was obvious that he had deep feelings for the young master. Most importantly, this white-haired youth was also handsome. Don't you think it's infuriating? Talented, knows how to use a sword, handsome and affectionate. What can I use to compare with him? Suddenly, Qin Chu's eyes revealed a trace of vicissitudes of life. In the end, it was just wishful thinking. Boom! On the battle platform, a fishy wind overflowed. The 7 oceanic tribe prodigies all had demonic shadows flickering around them. With Ling Tian's strength, they naturally did not dare to underestimate him. However, just as the 7 of them took a step forward and were about to pounce towards the white-haired youth, Ling Tian was one step ahead of them and raised the sword in his hand. 3,000 sword daos, gather within me. Buzz! An ear-piercing sword hum suddenly resounded for thousands of miles. Above the young man's head, streaks of sword chi shot up into the sky, forming tens of thousands of sword chi. In the blink of an eye, under the clear sky and bright sun, there seemed to be 3,000 divine swords that were pointed at the 7 members of the Sea tribe. An indescribable chill quietly enveloped everyone's hearts. However, at this moment they had no way out. I don't believe it. A mere deity overlord like you can fight us 7? Sha Wuxia shouted in a hoarse voice, his voice laced with panic. Then, under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the 7 people's attacks instantly fell. Boom boom! The ocean-like demonic aura turned into waves and swept across the sky. A blood-red palm print fell, covering the sky and covering the sun. A strange tentacle stretched out with flickering inscriptions. A Tao artifact pierced through the sky with unstoppable force. The 7 deity overlords attacked with all their might, and the void seemed to be unable to withstand their might and instantly shattered. However, at this moment, there was no trace of panic on Ling Tian's face. In fact, there was even a hint of mockery in his eyes. Boom! The demonic aura descended, and the battle stage instantly collapsed. Smoke and dust rose, completely blocking everyone's vision. However, just as the 7 terrifying attacks were about to land on Ling Tian's head, the ancient sword in the young man's hand suddenly slashed down. Clang! The ancient sword slashed down seemingly casually, but it contained a domineering force that could shatter eternity. At the same time, the 3,000 sword shadows in the sky vibrated at the same time. Then, like a meteor from outer space, they tore through the sky and slashed down on the battle stage. Buzz buzz! The void shattered like a mirror. Unparalleled killing intent shot up into the sky, collapsing the universe. In fact, every sword shadow was like a peerless immortal sword that could pierce through eternity, containing the power to kill gods and Buddhas. Even Ling Xiao showed a hint of surprise on his face. No wonder he is my younger brother. His talent is comparable to that of destitute Xiao, a peerless sword cultivator. Ling Tian's model was different from Qin Chu's. He had only cultivated one Dao. The pinnacle of sword cultivation was invincible. Even if he did not have a sword in his hand, as long as he had a sword in his heart, he could slay immortals. In all the worlds and epochs there might be a king in every era. However, the name of the sword immortal had never disappeared. He lived in seclusion and had no desires, but no one dared to look down on him. Pucci! The thick smell of blood suddenly surged out. The demonic aura that covered the sky was instantly slashed into nothingness by the 3,000 sword intents. However, at this moment, no one heard a miserable scream. It was only when the sky and earth became silent and there was no trace of demonic aura in the void that the crowd was shocked to see that there was no one on the battle stage except for the white-haired young man and Ling Xiao behind him. The ground was covered in blood and the path under the young man's feet was dyed into a river. There were no broken limbs or spiritual treasures. There was only endless blood. Hiss! Suddenly, the sound of people sucking in cold air could be heard. At this moment, the faces of the elders and disciples of the immortal sex were filled with indescribable shock. Even the eyes of Sha Yun and the others were filled with shock. Was this the legendary slashed into nothingness? The 7 geniuses of the Sea clan were slashed into nothingness by Ling Tian's sword. F***ck was this something that a human could do? A young divine marquis killed the other 7 geniuses of the Sea clan with just one slash of his sword? Gulp. Even Sha Yun, a 7th-grade divine emperor, felt a chill rising from the bottom of his feet. When he looked at the 2 peerless figures in black and white, there was a trace of fear in his eyes. A dignified divine emperor of the Sea clan was shocked by 2 young men from the human race? Brother, should we kill them? Ling Tian turned to look at Sha Yun and the others. His eyes were cold, but his tone was extremely gentle. It was as though those divine emperors, who were high and mighty in the eyes of the world, were as insignificant as ants in his heart. They could be killed with a wave of his hand. Oh! Ling Zhao's lips curled into a playful smile. Then, he shook his head lightly and said, "They are guests from afar. How can we kill them?" "Of course, I only said that I won't kill them now. I didn't say I won't kill them later. Since the enmity has been formed, it is natural to remove the root." Hearing that, Sha Yun and the others were filled with resentment. From what the 2 brothers said, it seemed like their fates were already in the hands of the 2 of them. Arrogant! In the end, Sha Yun didn't say anything and turned to leave. Elder Sha Yun, another genius from the Sea clan, has obtained the qualification. He Lianshan had already recovered from the shock and said with a smile, "Humph, you stay behind with him. The rest of you, follow me back to the clan." Sha Yun looked at the elder of the Elephant clan beside him coldly. Without hesitation, he walked down the mountain. Elder Sha Yun, at that moment, the elder of the Elephant clan turned pale, and he almost cried out. F***ck, aren't you telling me that I am a lamb that has entered the tiger's mouth? For the first time in his life, this Sea clan expert felt that the qualification to enter the heavenly lake was extremely hot. Looking at the 8 divine emperors of the Sea clan who left, Ling Zhao's lips curled into a sinister smile. Chapter 683. Among the 8 Sea race emperors, the strongest was only Sha Yun, who was at the 7th stage. As for the remaining 7, most of them were at the 2nd or 3rd stage. Although such a lineup was terrifying enough, it was easy for Ling Xiao to kill them with his current strength. Or rather, from the very beginning, Ling Xiao had never intended to let these experts of the Sea clan return. Since the seafood was delivered to their doorstep, it would be a waste if they didn't try it. Ha 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 ha. The saint is mighty. This time, the human race's victory is all on the saint. Helian Shan was in high spirits and laughed heartily. However, just as he finished laughing, Ling Tian suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Xiao. "Brother, fight with me." "That's what I was thinking." The corners of Ling Zhao's mouth curled up in a gentle smile, but the clear light in his eyes grew colder. Based on his understanding of Ling Tian, he knew that Ling Tian wanted to show off in front of him. As a younger brother, Ling Tian always dreamed of getting his elder brother's approval. Moreover, Ling Tian had always seen him as an enemy since they were young. Although the 2 of them had buried the hatchet, what Ling Tian wanted was Ling Zhao's respect. "Brother, I'm no longer the trash in your eyes. I'm now strong enough to fight alongside you." "Childish." Ling Xiao shook his head and sighed. He didn't doubt Ling Tian's loyalty to him, but he still had to teach his younger brother a lesson from time to time. This way, he would always remember who was the elder brother. At this moment, the faces of Helian Shan and the others froze again. Why are they fighting now? How dare you? Xiao Bo, who was standing in front of the crowd, was excited. The chance to show off was here. Xiao Bo was originally worried that this white-haired young man would replace his position in his master's heart. He didn't expect him to be so arrogant in the blink of an eye. He wanted to fight his master? What was this? This was going against his master? How dare you? How dare you fight with my master? I'll kill you with a single strike. Xiao Bo shouted angrily. He took a step forward and appeared beside Ling Xiao. However, this scene, in the eyes of the crowd, was more or less jealous. Only Qin Chu's face was gloomy, and there was a hint of envy between his brows. I want to be like that young man and stand bravely in front of young master. Tell his enemies that if they want to fight him, they will fight me first. Unfortunately, I'm not worthy. With Ling Tian's talent in the way of the sword, there was no need for a second sword strike to kill him. Leave it to me. The corners of Ling Zhao's mouth immediately curled up into a playful smile as he gazed at Xiao Ping, who stood in front of him with peerless saber intent, and then he patted Xiao Ping on the shoulder. My lord, what kind of enemy in this world is worthy of you personally taking action? Xiao Bo, is the sword in your hand? You only need to stand here and give the order. This humble Xiao will be able to kill all your enemies and help you. Pa! Before despicable Xiao could finish his words, Ling Xiao had already slapped him, sending him flying off the battle platform. Me? At this moment, Xiao Dao's eyes seemed to reveal a wisp of confusion. This shouldn't be. I've been organizing this speech below the battle platform for a long time. How did I make my lord angry? Of course, in Xiao Dao's eyes, everyone in this world was just an ant, and there was no need to worry. Moreover, with his lord's identity, it was absolutely impossible that he didn't have a supreme expert protecting him. But why was his lord angry? Could it be that I didn't manage my expression well enough just now? Brother, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. If you're my brother, come and kill me. Ling Tian was dressed in black, and his sword intent soared into the sky. In his hand, the immortal extermination sword bloomed with a dazzling light, making him seem even more upright. At this moment there was a mysterious concept on his body. It was as if he wasn't standing there as a person, but as a peerless sword. Compared to Ling Tian, although Ling Zhao's sword Dao had reached perfection, this perfection wasn't comprehended by himself, but was stolen. Therefore, even if they were in the same realm, Ling Tian was still superior in terms of sword Dao. There was no other reason. As the son of heaven, his sword heart was invincible. In this world, Ling Tian was the absolute main character. But so what? I am the sky demon at the top of the sky. Not to mention a mortal, even immortals and gods can't kill me. In order to show my respect to you, I will use all my strength. A pitch-black ancient blade suddenly appeared in Ling Zhao's hand. There was no sharpness on it, and there wasn't even much spirituality. There was only a long golden thread that ran straight through the blade, inexplicably strange and shocking. When Ling Xiao first obtained the blade, he was worried that he couldn't suppress the demonic intent of the blade and that others would see through it. But now, as his cultivation level increased and he stepped into the third transformation realm of the Sky Demon, he could completely control this blade. Moreover, the seal in this blade hadn't been completely broken, and its power was sealed. As long as Ling Xiao didn't activate it with his demonic intent, to outsiders, this primordial demon blade was just a peerless spiritual weapon. Blade. It's still a blade. Young master still looks down on him. Yes, although that white-haired youth's sword Dao is heaven-defying, he's not worthy of young master's sword. At this moment, Qin Chu was trembling with excitement. I still have a chance. I still have a chance. Obviously, there was no one in young master's heart now. Otherwise, why would he use a blade to fight the enemy? True respect was to defeat him with a sword. Brother, I'm coming. Ling Tian took a deep breath and suddenly slashed out with the ancient sword in his hand. A ray of clear light bloomed leisurely, and there seemed to be immortal scriptures and Buddhas chanting in unison. An ancient, immortal figure stood above Ling Tian's head, as if he had stepped through the ages. In the void, the sound of a sword suddenly rang out, clear and piercingly cold, without a trace of impurity. Piercingly cold, bone-piercing, and pure. Suddenly, the universe reversed, and the sun and moon lost their light. There was only one sword left in the world, and it was like the Milky Way hanging upside down in the ninth heaven. It turned into a 10,000 feet long sword and slashed down on Ling Zhao's head. The entire immortal mountain seemed to be unable to bear the power of this sword, and countless cracks instantly appeared on it. At this moment, the eyes of all the cultivators of the immortal sex were filled with indescribable shock. This was the so-called invincible immortal aura, right? A sword that split the sky, collapsed the mountain, and reversed the sea. Not to mention the younger generation, even god-emperors could only temporarily avoid this sword, let alone those of the younger generation. Suddenly, everyone's eyes fell on Ling Xiao. Before Ling Tian came, this saint was said to be invincible among his peers. But now, after Ling Tian revealed his talent, they all wanted to see who was the stronger one between these two monstrous geniuses. Interesting. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the falling sword intent. If the sword that Ling Tian used to kill the 7 marquises of the sea race was said to be the combination of 3,000 sword intents, and it could kill all enemies in the world, then this sword was the true peak of the sword Tao, and it turned into a sword that split the sky. This was a sword that could kill an enemy. It was also the strongest sword move that Ling Tian was able to execute right now. The galaxy collapsed, the world lost its light, and the primordial Tao seemed to turn into nothingness under this sword. Foolish younger brother, you didn't disappoint me in the end, Ling Xiao said indifferently and suddenly raised the ancient sword in his hand. Buzz! At this moment, heaven and earth trembled, and the 8 wastelands shook. Chapter 684. At the peak of the immortal mystic peak, a blinding light suddenly shone. Outside Ling Zhao's body, thousands of strange phenomena appeared. Among them, there seemed to be golden light splitting the sun, ancient trees towering into the sky, vast divine oceans, and heavenly palaces descending into the world. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, Ling Zhao's ancient blade suddenly slashed down towards the 1,000-foot-long sword. At this moment, wherever the blade passed, all light was extinguished. Thousands of illusions were faintly flowing within the blade. Immortals and Buddhas bowed their heads, demons and ghosts bowed their heads. Wherever the blade passed, the heavens trembled and the 9 heavens were destroyed. Thousands of Taoist rhymes gathered on the blade. Splitting the heavens and splitting the earth was not as good as the destruction of the world. In the end, under everyone's shocked and horrified gazes, the 2 destructive attacks finally collided in the void. Endless killing intent surged into the sky. The sword light that filled the sky was instantly shattered. Only that blade seemed to be able to destroy the primordial and ancient times, piercing through the universe and galaxies as it slashed towards Ling Tian. Poochie. He was not prepared at all. Or rather, even Ling Tian did not expect that his sword could not even block Ling Zhao's attack for one breath. The torrential heavenly might contained an unparalleled force as it ruthlessly pressed down. Before the blade arrived, Ling Tian was already vomiting blood and flying away. Ling Tian. Suddenly, a soft shout came from the void far away. Following that, a beautiful figure in yellow descended from the sky and anxiously helped Ling Tian up from the ground. Then, she turned to look at Ling Xiao with a resentful expression. Brother, he came from so far away. Why did you injure him the moment you arrived? You don't know that in the past 6 months, in order to follow in your footsteps, he sealed himself at the peak of the path of swords and suffered the pain of thousands of swords slicing his body. Now that he came out of seclusion, he came to find you. Sooner, please don't be so harsh on him. Yi Sun-er's eyes were filled with tears and a faint trace of resentment. Her jade-like hand glowed with a green light as she pressed it towards Ling Tian's chest. Ling Xiao withdrew his blade and shook his head helplessly. After not seeing her for half a year, Yi Sun-er's cultivation had made a huge breakthrough. Although a second-stage divine marquis was not as shocking as Ling Tian's, in the four borders, she could be considered a monster. Sun-er, how can you speak to my brother like that? It's not what you think. I was the one who took the initiative to spar with my brother. I was no match for him and got injured. Ling Tian furrowed his brows, his tone turning cold. However, at that moment, there was a trace of defeat in his eyes. After cultivating bitterly for half a year, he comprehended the Tao in a single day. Originally, he thought that the gap between him and Ling Xiao would shrink a little. However, today's battle had completely shattered the hope in his heart. Furthermore, Ling Tian could faintly feel that his elder brother did not use his full strength in that slash. Sigh, it seems like I still have a long way to go before I can catch up with my brother. Young master. Just as Ling Xiao was looking at the two people in front of him with a playful expression, another gentle voice came from behind him. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. He turned around and saw Lin Ming standing in front of him. She was dressed in red. Her face was flushed red. She looked shy. On that fair and gentle face, there was actually an indescribable sense of nervousness and anticipation. Meng-er? Ling Xiao was stunned. Then, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was obvious that the three of them had come from the eastern border together. Now, the only person in the eastern border who knew about his whereabouts was Liang Yi. Previously, Ling Xiao had sent a message to Liang Yi through a message-transmitting talisman. He asked Liang Yi to find an opportunity to capture the third divine messenger who was guarding the eastern border. He would find a way to kill the first divine messenger. He did not expect Ling Tian and the other two to come in just a few days. First-grade divine marquis with 3,500 providence points. Lin Meng was the most careful and gentle among all his women. After all, she was born in a humble family. If it were not for Ling Xiao, she would have married a disciple from a small sect and lived a lonely life. Therefore, in Lin Meng's heart, Ling Xiao was the benefactor who changed her life. He was also the benefactor who gave her everything. Young master, you said that as long as I can become a divine marquis, I can follow you. I am now a divine marquis, Lin Ming said softly. She lowered her head and rubbed the corner of her clothes. She was afraid that her young master would be angry at her for acting on her own accord. However, she missed her young master very much. She would miss him every day. Not bad. Ling Xiao smiled gently and rubbed Lin Ming's hair. When this scene fell into Feng Rouge's eyes, it instantly caused an inexplicable jealousy to emerge from the bottom of her heart. A first-grade divine marquis? How can she stand in front of you? Why can they stand in front of you but I can't? Why did I transmigrate into the body of a villain? Ling Xiao, is this my destiny? Alright, let's get down to business. Ling Xiao turned his head and looked at Helian Shan as a gentle smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Sect leader, can you open the Heaven Basin secret realm and let us in? Of course. Holy Sun, please. Helian Shan's expression changed. It was too scary. He thought that the white-haired young man was already the strongest in the world. He killed 7 marquis with 1 sword. Moreover, he was a Sea Tribe divine marquis. However, he didn't expect that the young man couldn't even block a single strike from the Holy Sun. In other words, Ling Xiao now had the ability to kill an emperor. What kind of heavenly talent was this? Throughout history, it was unheard of for a young man to kill an emperor. The Saint sect was indeed terrifying. You guys, go to the hall at the back of the mountain and wait for me. Remember, no matter what you hear, don't come out. Ling Xiao turned around and looked at Ling Tian and the others. Then, he followed He Lianshan to the peak of the mountain. Beside him, the southern border prodigies were excited. Only Phoenix Rouge frowned slightly. She seemed to be pondering. Her heavenly poisoned sacred body was suppressed by her spiritual energy. That was why it wasn't exposed. However, every time she made a breakthrough, even if it was just a small level, the heavenly poison would be released automatically. It was hard to control. If she accidentally made a breakthrough after entering the heaven basin, wouldn't she poison the southern border prodigies and the young man from the sea tribe to death? Rouge, you seem to have something on your mind? Just as Phoenix Rouge was pondering, Ling Zhao's voice rang in her ears. Haha, no. I'm just shocked by your ability. Phoenix Rouge shook her head and smiled. Young master, I feel that I'm not qualified to enter the heaven basin. Your brother is qualified to enjoy such an opportunity. Oh, there's no need. I'm looking forward to bathing with Rouge. Ling Xiao smiled, and his tone contained a wisp of indisputable dignity. Young master, Rouge, you don't have to say any more. If you don't go to the heaven basin, then they don't have to go either. Upon hearing this, the surrounding sky prides instantly stopped in their tracks and looked at Feng Rouge in surprise. Damn it. Is this young lady a fool? She's actually pushing away the opportunity that's already in her hands. Dao, you're so troublesome. Holy Sun Ling Xiao is giving you face, isn't he? Isn't he giving you face? Sensing the resentment in everyone's eyes, Phoenix Rouge didn't say anything in the end. She quietly took out a few elixirs from her cosmos bag and swallowed them. Hopefully, she could suppress her spiritual energy and survive this ordeal. Sigh. It's so difficult to be a villain. If he killed someone, he would be scolded. If he did not kill someone, he would still be scolded. If you're cold-blooded, you'll be scolded. If you have some humanity, you'll be scolded. I don't want to kill anyone. I don't want to be soft-hearted. I just want to avoid karma and live in seclusion. Look, not only am I being scolded, but I'm also being punished. Chapter 685. Below the immortal mystic mountain, an ancient forest towered into the sky and covered the clouds. Less than 100 miles away from the immortal mystic sect, Sha Yun and the other Sea Clan god emperors looked cold and surprised. Everyone, this is the immortal mystic sect. What is the meaning of this? Since you're here, there's no need to leave. Xiong Huan stood in front of the forest with Xing Shen and Hua Heng on both sides behind him. They looked at Sha Yun with ridicule. With Xiong Huan's strength, it was not a problem to kill Sha Yun alone. As for the remaining Sea Clan god emperors, they were only grade 5 experts. How could they be a match for Xing Shen and Hua Heng? What? Arrogant! How dare the three of you speak so arrogantly? Sha Yun looked ferocious and his eyes were filled with anger. He was the great elder of the Sea King Blood Shark clan, yet he was humiliated in the immortal mystic mountain. Moreover, the three people in front of him did not look like they were from the righteous path. Their demonic aura was overwhelming. However, where did they get the courage to cause trouble in the immortal mystic sect? My master invites you to be his guest. Do you plan to walk or lie down? Xiong Huan took a step forward and the demonic aura around him soared into the sky. A torrential aura suddenly descended from the sky and smashed Sha Yun's body onto the ground. Puchi. A mere blood shark was naturally not a threat to Xiong Huan. Moreover, Sha Yun's cultivation had just reached grade 7. He could not even move the severely injured Helian Shan. How could he be a match for Xiong Huan? Even if Gu Zhen killed him now, it would not be difficult for him. You don't know your place. Xiong Huan lifted his leg and stepped on Sha Yun, who was about to get up. He looked at the remaining Sea Clan god emperors coldly. At this moment, everyone's face turned pale. Just as they were about to turn around and escape, they saw a blood demon phantom standing in the sky and blocking their escape route. Gu Zhen. In just a few days, the 1,000 Ghost Mountain Master's injuries had completely recovered. Moreover, after the Poison Sect Master and the Blood Moon Tower Master died in the Immortal Mystic Sect, the disciples of the two demon sects were subdued by Gu Zhen. As for the Charming Valley's master, Hua Yuji, she had long been interested in Gu Ying Xen. However, because of Gu Xie, who was a burden, Hua Yuji did not dare to directly reveal it. But now, Hua Yuji had already led her people and moved to the 10,000 Ghost Mountain. Whoosh, whoosh. In the ancient forest, countless demonic shadows stepped out and surrounded the 7 Sea Tribe Emperors. Of course, with Gu Zhen's strength, there was no need for anyone else to make a move. He and Xiong Huan alone were enough to kill the 8 Thearchs, but his lord had said to capture him alive. Ancient poison. What are you trying to do? You? Confusion flashed across the faces of the oceanic species experts. F***CK. Was this great demon crazy? Shouldn't they be going up the mountain to kill the righteous people? Why did they block their way? What the hell was going on? Also, a few days ago, the 1,000 Ghost Mountain Lord led the 4 demon sects to attack the Immortal Mystic Sect. Everyone in the southern border knew about this. However, it was said that on that day, 2 of the leaders of the 4 great demonic sects died on the mountain peak. Gu Zhen was seriously injured and fled. Even his daughter died at the hands of Su Yunzi. However, it had only been a few days. How did Gu Zhen become so lively? Moreover, did he not learn his lesson? He actually dared to lead the experts of the demonic sects to the foot of the Immortal Mountain? Wait, could it be that he wanted to kill them and shift the blame to the Immortal Mystic Sect, leading to a war between the Blood Shark clan and the righteous sects? Gu Zhen, you are vicious. But, Mountain Lord, don't do it. I'll surrender. I'll surrender. Soon, the 7 Sea Tribe Emperor's cultivations were sealed by Xiong Huan and the others and thrown into the ancient forest. Then, the demons raised their heads and looked in the direction of the mountain peak. Early this morning, Ling Xiao had arranged for them to guard the foot of the Immortal Mountain. Capturing the Sea Tribe Emperors was one of the reasons. As for the second reason, perhaps even Helian Shan would never have imagined that Gu Zhen and the others would dare to attack the immortal sects again. Now that Helian Shan was seriously injured, of course, they had to take advantage of his weakness to kill him and seize the Immortal Mountain's inheritance. Only then would those dead disciples of the demonic sects not be wasted. Phoenix Rouge, even if you are not tolerated by the 9 heavens, I am still willing to slaughter all living things for you. I can't take it anymore. Watch carefully. I am going to be possessed by love. Ding. The foundation of the immortal sects and the destined woman are in my hands. I am killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Of course, the reason why Ling Xiao wanted to destroy the Immortal Mystic Sect was because of their foundation. However, there was another important reason. Now that he had appeared in the southern border with his real face and real name, it was not a mistake. The 2 borders were thousands of miles apart. Moreover, the southern border had never been valued by the human race. There were many demons and devils living there. No one would travel there for no reason. However, the voice of the first divine envoy was strangely familiar. It made Ling Xiao feel uneasy. The battle for the heavenly lake had just ended today. In other words, none of the disciples in the mountain had left. Only then would it be absolutely safe to kill them all. It was already late in the mortal world and autumn had arrived. Rugo shi fart dd. In the azure world, a tall mountain stood at the top of the sky. There were divine palaces and forests. Ancient trees formed a forest that occupied tens of thousands of miles of land. Looking from afar, the auspicious chi in the forest turned into auspicious clouds that floated on the mountain. It was a beautiful scene. At this moment, in a magnificent ancient palace at the highest point of the mountain, 4 white-haired old men were sitting cross-legged in front of the palace. They were staring at a chess game in front of them. One of the white-haired old men in a white robe with a red face and long beard was twirling a chess piece. He looked relaxed, but there was a trace of worry between his brows. At this moment, the four of them did not emit any aura. However, the aura they emitted was of the same origin as heaven and earth. Obviously, the cultivation of these four people had surpassed the shackles of the Xingzhou. Is there still no news from the sacred world? No. It has been 300 years. What does Yi Qingchan want to do? Back then, you old farts did not know right from wrong and looked down on Qingchan. You banished her to the lower world. Given her character, it is not strange that she cut off all contact with the clan. No, old ancestor. Back then, Qingchan, enough. There's no need to mention this matter anymore. There's no need to panic about the matter of the lower realm for now. Don't forget, that person sealed himself in this world back then. Now that this world is sealed, it might not be a bad thing for the Yi clan. In the end, the white-robed old man placed his chess piece and laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha, I won. Old ancestor, you mean, but at this moment, everyone's attention was no longer on the chess game. They all frowned at the white-robed old man. Back then, the Foliaceae were enfeoffed here. It seemed that the immortals were heartless, but it was actually because they trusted us. However, the obsession in our ancestors' heart has already been formed. If we continue to suppress it, I fear that our body and soul will be destroyed. So, the old man raised his head, a trace of bitterness flickering in his old eyes. Sigh, forget it. No one can know about this. Otherwise, it will be difficult for our Foliaceae to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Yes, old ancestor. Oh right. Have you found it? The ripple that appeared in the Xingzhou passage 17 years ago? Suddenly, a trace of killing intent flashed in the white-haired old man's eyes. Not yet, the other three shook their heads and sighed inwardly. To be able to avoid our consciousness, that person's cultivation must be above mine. The white-haired old man sighed softly. Compared to the Xingzhou passage being sealed, he was actually more worried about the strange ripple that suddenly appeared in the Xingzhou passage. That ripple did not come from his Foliaceae. In other words, either he was wrong, or someone had used some unknown method to hide from the Foliaceae, break through his Foliaceae domain, and head to the Xingzhou. In the Azure domain, there were tens of thousands of lower worlds, but each lower world belonged to someone, and other races could not casually step into it. But who was it? How did they do it? And then, what did they do? Chapter 686. What? Ancestor, who has a higher cultivation level than you in the Azure world. That's right, ancestor. In the Foliaceae ancestral hall, the three old men's expressions froze. They suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. Don't underestimate the hidden ancient and immortal dynasties in the Azure world. Don't underestimate the desires of humans. The white-robed old man sighed. The Realm Lord has been missing for more than 200 years. The Azure world is about to be chaotic. At such a juncture, we should be more careful and protect the Foliaceae's foundation. Ancestor, could it be the Xianyuan people? If the Xianyuan people want to descend to the lower realm, do they need to go through our spatial tunnel? Use your smart head. Forget it, send more people to guard the exit. No matter who it is impossible to ignore the suppression of the heavenly Tao. No matter what his purpose is, he will return. When the time comes, Yes, ancestor. The three bowed, their eyes flashing with seriousness. The Azure world was hundreds of millions of miles wide. There were many ancient sects and clans. There were many large mansions in the immortal dynasty. However, there was only one person who was the strongest in this world. He was the Realm Lord who was appointed by the immortal race to be in charge of this world. However, what was strange was that this Realm Lord suddenly disappeared 200 years ago. 100 years ago, the forces did not dare to act rashly. However, gradually, some people could not suppress the desires in their hearts and began to covet the supreme treasure in the realm Lord's Hall that suppressed all races. It was said that with this supreme treasure, one could be respected by heaven and earth. There was hope to step out of the mortal world and become an immortal. In the past 100 years, chaos had appeared in the azure world, and monsters had appeared. It seemed to confirm the saying that a chaotic world was coming. Boom! At the same time, in another magnificent palace in the azure world, a dignified middle-aged man wearing an emperor's robe and a golden crown smashed a corner of the golden palace into pieces. Gu Chaoxiai, do you really want to anger me to death? The middle-aged man shouted coldly. There seemed to be a divine gate in his eyes that contained supreme dominance. I said, I won't marry him. Before him was a peerless woman in an imperial robe. Her expression was indifferent, and with just one sentence, the middle-aged emperor's face turned completely green. My immortal phoenix ancient dynasty is now in danger. Only by joining hands with the Saint Spirit ancient dynasty can we safely survive this calamity. You said that you would be able to turn the situation around in 500 years. Now that 500 years is almost up, what do you have to turn the situation around? Gu Chaoxiai, do you really not care about the rise and fall of the Gu clan? The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with vicissitudes of life. He was clearly extremely furious. If we depend on outsiders for the survival of our dynasty, we will lose sooner or later. What's the difference between losing a day earlier and losing a day later? Gu Chaoxiai remained unmoved. Her eyes were clear, but there was a trace of obsession in them. You, Gu Chaoxiai, the Gu clan has handed the celestial dynasty over to you, but that doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. This marriage, whether you agree to it or not, it's not up to you. Humph. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man lifted his foot and walked out of the palace. Keep an eye on the emperor. Don't let her step out of this palace. Yes. Outside the golden palace, there were several responses. Gu Chaoxiai's face suddenly revealed a touch of gentleness. She gently caressed her lower abdomen, but her eyes gradually reflected a gentle and handsome face. In the boundless sea domain, thousands of miles away, a golden-robed figure stood with his hands behind his back. His white hair was draped over his shoulders, but his face was covered by a strange golden mask. In front of him, a beautiful figure in purple also had her hands behind her back. There was a faint smile on her beautiful face. Her eyes were a strange golden color, and between her eyebrows, there was a touch of purple makeup. Right now, she was just standing there, but she gave people a feeling of grace and nobility, as if she was standing high above the 9 heavens. She was like a high and mighty emperor, looking down on all living things. She was indifferent and otherworldly, aloof and independent. The first divine envoy came to my sea domain as a guest. Why didn't you come directly to the Ocean Imperial Palace? Why do you have to be so sneaky? The purple-robed woman smiled charmingly. There seemed to be 10,000 kinds of flirtatious feelings circulating between her eyebrows, causing ripples in one's heart. Purple Emperor, how would I dare to disturb you? Divine Envoy Dugu's expression was indifferent. He did not relax in the slightest because of this woman's beauty. The person before him was the current overlord of the boundless sea domain, the Sea Emperor Ziyen. Of course, the 10 clans of the boundless sea domain preferred to address her as the Purple Emperor. Even though she had a beautiful appearance and a gentle personality, only those who truly understood her would know that this woman was vicious, merciless, and ruthless. Back then, the boundless sea domain was chaotic, and the various clans were in great numbers. Although they did not get along well with the human race, they did not have the intention to unify the boundless sea domain. After all, no one wanted to be reduced from an ocean monarch who controlled others to a stinky vassal. However, since they were unwilling, he would kill them until they were willing. Ziyen had appeared out of nowhere. With her own strength, she had slaughtered several tens of sea clans, recruited experts, and established herself as the Sea Emperor. After conquering the boundless sea domain for 100 years, she had finally unified the boundless sea domain. Although not everyone was truly willing to submit to this sea clan emperor, she was ruthless and ruthless. The current sea domain's royal clan did not dare to have any complaints due to her ruthless methods. 10,000 miles per day? Divine Envoy Dugu thinks highly of me. However, may I know why Divine Envoy Dugu has come? Ziyen smiled warmly. Her golden eyes revealed a trace of coldness. With the current strength of the boundless sea domain, they did not dare to compete with the Holy Church. However, she did not place this first Divine Envoy Dugu in her eyes. This was the boundless sea, not the Holy Church. If this Divine Envoy Dugu dared to be impudent, she naturally would not weaken the boundless sea domain's prestige. I heard that an expert of the boundless sea domain joined hands with a great demon and slaughtered the people of the western border. They destroyed the cold moon celestial palace that my holy church controlled in the western border. I wonder if the Purple Emperor knows about this matter? Dugu Yunjin's indifferent words caused the smile on Ziyen's face to deepen. First Divine Envoy Dugu's cultivation is unparalleled. I heard that the Divine Envoy Dugu knows the secrets of heaven. Why don't you use your fingers to divine whether this matter is true or false? One divination cannot divine everything. I fear that the heavenly Tao is unpredictable. The Purple Emperor must be joking. If I could divine everything in the world, why would I need to ask this question? Dugu Yunjin's eyes narrowed. Even the Holy Church did not know that he was good at divination. How did Ziyen know about this? First Divine Envoy Dugu thinks that a traitor has appeared in my sea domain and wants to destroy the Holy Church? Traitor? The Purple Emperor must also be drooling over the Xingzhou continent, right? You appeared out of nowhere 300 years ago. Can the Purple Emperor tell me, which clan are you from? Dugu Yunjin sneered. His eyes suddenly shone brightly. Ziyan's appearance was too sudden. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. However, because she had slaughtered the sea domain, the Holy Church did not interfere. After all, suppressing one person was much easier than suppressing the entire boundless sea domain. It was rumored that the Purple Emperor had dominated the boundless sea domain for 100 years but had never revealed her true body. The sea domain had different opinions about her background. However, Ziyen controlled lightning and had unparalleled combat strength in the sea, which gradually dispelled the doubts in everyone's hearts. However, no matter what the more mysterious something was, the more shocking the secret it hid. Which clan I am from will depend on whether the Divine Envoy Dugu has the strength to force me to reveal my true form. The Purple Emperor smiled faintly. He suddenly took a step forward, and a wave of 10,000 feet tall surged. It evolved into a divine might that covered the sky and fell on Dugu Yunjin. Humph! I have long wanted to experience the strength of the sea domain's overlord. Dugu Yunjin's expression did not change. He sent out a seal and 10,000 Dao appeared. He instantly clashed with the Purple Emperor. Chapter 687. At the peak of the immortal mystic mountain, there was a spiritual aura. Boundless Tao intent formed a sea that roared in the sky. At this moment, Helian Shan and the others were standing in front of an ancient forest at the peak of the mountain. They were looking at a celestial gate that was filled with dense spiritual energy. Behind this spiritual gate is the heavenly pool. Everyone, this pool will only last for one day. Prepare to enter the pool to comprehend the Tao intent. Helian Shan smiled faintly. His palm suddenly formed a seal. A golden seal turned into a ray of light and entered the celestial gate. Instantly, the sealing power that was originally present on the seal gradually dissipated. It formed a path that was shining with a seven-colored light. No one knew where it led to. Sect Master, where did this heavenly pool come from? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. There was a deep look in his eyes. It seemed that this mysterious place had a lot of history. Moreover, for some reason, Ling Xiao felt that the purpose of this heavenly pool's existence wasn't as simple as people thought. It only appeared once every 100 years. Was this heavenly pool really prepared for the youths of the human race? But why was it that every time the heavenly pool fought, it seemed that the sea tribe would benefit? In fact, if Ling Xiao hadn't come, the ones standing here now would most likely be the 10 monstrous geniuses of the sea tribe. Oh, Saint, actually, I'm not too sure about the origin of this heavenly pool. The restriction inside is quite strong. It's very difficult for Emperor God experts to enter. However, the appearance of this pool is quite strange. It appeared on the peak of Xian Sea Mountain 300 years ago. Hence, it was named the Heavenly Pool. It's called the Heavenly Pool. Helian Shan smiled bitterly. However, Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of hesitation. Another 300 years. Was it a coincidence? Or was it deliberately set up by someone? However, even Helian Shan, an 8th-grade divine emperor, couldn't sense the strangeness. The origin of this heavenly pool was really mysterious. 300 years ago, did Sect Master establish the immortal mystic sect? No. It's because of the charm of this place that the immortal mystic sect chose to establish our sect on this mountain. Helian Shan answered honestly. However, there was a hint of doubt between his eyebrows. Saint, oh nothing. I'm just asking casually. Ling Xiao shook his head and turned to Phoenix Rouge. Rouge, let's go. Ah, please, young master. Phoenix Rouge pursed her red lips and stepped into the immortal gate with Ling Xiao behind her. Boom! As the two of them walked in, a secluded valley came into view. Spirituality rose and fell within it, and Tao insights were profound. It was like an otherworldly place, and it emitted a wisp of faint primal chaos intent. Spiritual chi rose and fell like an ocean, transforming into thousands of strange phenomena in the void. There were whales leaping into the sea, phoenixes soaring into the sky, and even the ancient trees and flowers in the valley were born with a wisp of ethereal charm amidst this spiritual aura. Even though Ling Zhao's realm had the 10 dragons transformation spell formation, it was far too vast. However, this small valley actually bore such a great aura. It had been accumulating for 100 years, so one could imagine how much spiritual energy it contained. Taking a deep breath made him feel relaxed and happy. The spiritual power in his body seemed to show signs of boiling. At the center of the valley, a mirror-like lake was rippling with light. Tao patterns evolved, and auspicious signs rose and fell. Obviously, this was the heavenly pool that people talked about. Wow! As expected of the spiritual chi of southern border. Cultivating in this heavenly pool for a day is comparable to cultivating in the outside world for decades, right? More than that, I heard that the water in this heavenly pool is formed by Tao patterns. Soaking in it can help one comprehend Tao laws. It's simply a place for immortals to cultivate. Everyone, shouldn't we thank the Holy Sun Ling Xiao properly? The Holy Sun is invincible. He has bestowed us with the heavenly pool. I will kowtow first to show my respect. The southern border prodigies instantly bowed their heads and kowtowed to Ling Xiao. Even the young man from the sea tribe mixed in with the crowd and kowtowed with the rest. Damn. What can I do? I didn't want to do it either. But my legs won't listen to me. They just suddenly became weak. Rouge, let's go. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and turned to look at Phoenix Rouge. However, the latter only nodded and even held her breath. Rouge? What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? Ling Xiao frowned slightly, but there was a subtle smile at the corner of his mouth. The Lady of Destiny was indeed extremely cautious. Ling Xiao had some guesses about what Phoenix Rouge was doing now. Regardless of whether it was the poison body or the divine body, it would improve as one's cultivation level broke through. This Phoenix Rouge was obviously afraid that the heavenly pool's spiritual chi would stimulate her poison body. If she accidentally exposed herself, wouldn't she be doomed? However, Rouge, do you think you can suppress your cultivation level by not breathing? Childish. Why do you think I spent so much effort to bring in this bunch of rotten fish and shrimps? Of course, it's to poison you. Phoenix Rouge pursed her red lips and shook her head vigorously. Then, before Ling Xiao could continue asking, she had already started walking towards the heavenly pool. Seeing this, Ling Xiao did not say anything else. He followed closely behind Phoenix Rouge and walked to the bank of the heavenly pool. As they got closer, they realized that the heavenly pool's water was completely formed by the spiritual qi. Layer upon layer, as if the divine runes of the great Tao were intertwined. Clear light flashed within, and the spiritual qi was overflowing. It was extremely mysterious. Although Ling Xiao had seen many dragon veins and spirit veins in this world, he still felt a little surprised at this moment. Was this level of spirituality something that could be nurtured by an immortal mountain? Absolutely impossible. There was something strange about this heavenly pool. Wow! This spiritual qi is simply too terrifying. Everyone, what are you waiting for? How much you can absorb in a day's time will depend on your luck. Some of the heavenly talents could no longer suppress their desire and jumped into the heavenly pool. Ling Xiao smiled and looked at Phoenix Rouge. Rouge, let's go together? Phoenix Rouge blushed slightly. She was a little expectant and a little fearful. This heavenly pool was covered by the spiritual qi, so it was easy to hide one's whereabouts. However, sacred son Ling Xiao, can you stop paying attention to me? As the son of destiny, shouldn't you be more concerned about the creation than your own father? Why do you care what I do? Hurry up and jump in. Let's go. Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and grabbed Phoenix Rouge's soft and slender hand. Then, he walked towards the depths of the heavenly pool. When the two of them disappeared into the heavenly pool, Phoenix Rouge nervously used her spiritual qi to seal her meridians. She was afraid that the spiritual qi in the heavenly pool would enter her body and completely release the power of her poisonous body. But, just as everyone was either sitting cross-legged or standing in the heavenly pool, preparing to cultivate, the world in front of them suddenly turned pitch black. A mysterious feeling circulated around their bodies. In the next moment, everything returned to normal. That fluctuation just now was an illusion created by this heavenly pool, right? It must be. Don't hesitate anymore. If you continue to hesitate, you might even miss the creation. The heavenly talents shook their heads and smiled bitterly. However, Ling Xiao's expression was still calm. At this moment, Phoenix Rouge's face was also blank. She seemed to be empty and numb, as if she had fallen into another world. Given the strength of the divine overlords, how could they know that they had already fallen into an illusion? Ling Xiao turned around and looked at the heavenly pool. The corner of his lips curled up into an evil smile. Chapter 688. According to the usual plot, there must be other opportunities hidden in the heavenly lake. Moreover, the spirit qi here is so dense that there must be a source. Ling Xiao frowned and looked at the bottom of the lake. Suddenly, he sank and disappeared from everyone's sight. However, after a while, even with Ling Xiao's current strength, he still could not detect the source of the spirit qi. He could only sit cross-legged at the bottom of the heavenly lake and fall into deep thought. This heavenly lake's water was formed by endless Tao will. Ling Xiao's divine sense could not fully utilize it. If he devoured all the spirit qi in the heavenly lake, or if the speed of the spirit qi could not keep up with the speed of the spirit qi, would he be able to find its source? Purple qi pure Tao body. A clear light flashed in Ling Xiao's eyes. Immediately after, the pure Tao body appeared in front of him and sat cross-legged on the spot. Then, both of them shone with a mysterious light. Two terrifying devouring forces spread out from the bottom of the lake. The pure Tao body had the ability to devour the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Now, the celestial source in Ling Zhao's body also had the same power. Of course, this devouring was still far from Huahua's devouring talent. However, compared to the other southern border heavenly talents, this speed was already terrifying. The heavenly lake opened once every 100 years. Each time, only 10 people could enter and stay for a day. This setting meant that although the spirit qi in the heavenly lake was terrifying, it could only allow 10 people to cultivate at most. Otherwise, since the lake was so big, why would they fight to the death when everyone could just come in and take a bath? Therefore, according to Ling Zhao's deduction, with his and the pure Tao body's devouring speed, the spirit qi in the heavenly lake would not last for long. Boom! Boom! The sound of spirit qi surging rang out from Ling Zhao's body. At this moment, every meridian in his body was filled with terrifying power. A wisp of demonic will spread out and shrouded his body. He was like a rock that would never move. A terrifying momentum spread out from the bottom of the lake. If it weren't for the fact that the remaining 9 people had already fallen into the overlapping illusions, just this movement alone would be enough to make them panic in fear. The two figures turned into 2 spiritual spirals, madly devouring the spiritual qi in the pool. At the same time, Ling Zhao's cultivation level was also slowly rising. Time passed slowly until the young man in the pool suddenly opened his eyes. A strand of vast spiritual pressure spread out, causing thousands of ripples. The heavenly lake, which was originally filled with spiritual energy, had already become a puddle of clear water. However, the heavens' favorites in the pool continued to look intoxicated. Obviously, they didn't notice anything strange. 4th Stage Godly King. Ling Zhao's eyes were clear and cold. He withdrew his purple cloud stainless Tao body and spread out his divine sense. In the next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. At this moment, at the bottom of the heavenly lake, a clear light formation gradually revealed its true form. It was just that the array patterns within were concealing the ripples. If not for the spiritual aura within the pool dissipating, even with Ling Zhao's 7th grade God Emperor Divine Soul, he wouldn't have noticed it. There is indeed something. Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly. He stretched out his hand and touched the formation. A ripple spread out. There seemed to be a celestial aura circulating within it. Tao light filled the air. It was indescribably mysterious and magical. However, the formations in this world were meaningless to Ling Zhao. Since the boundary-breaking talisman could penetrate through the realm, what formation could stop its power? In fact, as Ling Zhao's knowledge increased, he vaguely felt that this ancient talisman seemed to be a little too abnormal. When he went to the 4 barren lands to look for the demon blade, he relied on the boundary-breaking talisman to open the barrier of the lower realm. According to the moon of Xianyuan, this talisman was the inheritance treasure of the Danyuan holy ground. However, Ling Zhao had destroyed many of the holy ground's dynasties. Among them, the Cold Moon Celestial Palace had been passed down for thousands of years. Its ancestor had followed the Celestial clan to destroy the Sky Demon Palace. Even so, Ling Zhao had never seen anything similar to the boundary-breaking talisman in their heritage. Therefore, Ling Zhao had a bold guess. Perhaps his mother had some background that he didn't know of. Buzz! With a buzz, Ling Zhao's figure instantly disappeared from the bottom of the pool. However, when his figure appeared in the ancient formation, his eyes quietly revealed a trace of surprise. At this moment, what appeared in front of him was a narrow and dark underground palace. Rather than a palace, it was more like a prison. In the center, an ancient bluestone platform stood tall. There seemed to be a ferocious demon figure shackled on it, emitting a faint spiritual aura. Ziyen! You bitch! How dare you appear in front of me? As if sensing Ling Zhao's aura, the demon figure's aura clearly stopped. Then, it let out a low and angry roar. Ziyan! Don't let me break free from this formation. Otherwise, I'll make you suffer a fate worse than death. Ziyan? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. There was a story. Moreover, at this moment, he could clearly sense that although the demon figure looked ferocious and terrifying, there wasn't a trace of demon aura around it. Instead, it was exactly the same as the spiritual aura of the heavenly pool. Ling Xiao snapped his fingers, and a lightning sun instantly bloomed above his head. Then, he saw that there was a golden demon crocodile tied up on the bluestone platform. Ancient heavenly crocodile? Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes, and the demon crocodile's ferocious expression suddenly froze. Not Ziyan? Who are you? And who are you? To be honest, Ling Xiao was a little confused. According to Su Yunzi, the heavenly crocodile clan was originally the overlord of the sea, but it had long been destroyed in the long river of history. How could there be a living one here? Moreover, the overlord of the sea was originally an ancient demon race. Although it wasn't a divine race or a mutant race, it was still an ancient demon race. Therefore, although there was only a trace of the heavenly crocodile's remnant soul in the Qingyu talisman, it had the power of an ancient demon race. But why didn't this living heavenly crocodile have a trace of demon aura? Moreover, what was up with its cultivation level? 6th stage Divine Emperor? Was the heavenly crocodile clan so weak? After all, it was an ancient overlord clan. Those who could live to this age should be experts at the level of ancestors and ancestors, right? Human young man. I am the clan leader of the heavenly crocodile clan, Eni. Young man, hurry up and tell me, how is Ziyan now? The clan leader of the heavenly crocodile clan roared angrily. However, Ling Zhao's eyes flashed with surprise. Previously, he had seen the heavenly crocodile's remnant soul in Qing Yu's body when they were at their peak. However, the heavenly crocodile's remnant soul back then had an incomplete memory. Ling Xiao didn't expect the clan leader to still be alive when the young clan leader was dead. Was this appropriate? Also, how did he manage to survive for so long? Who was Ziyan? Chapter 689. I don't know who Ziyan is, but the heavenly alligator clan was exterminated a long time ago. How did you survive? Ling Zhao's eyes were clear, as if he was not shocked by the heavenly alligator's identity. At this moment, the anger on Eni's face froze. Why is this young man so calm after knowing the identity of the heavenly alligator clan's leader? Shouldn't he bow to me with a solemn expression, call me senior, and then ask me to take him away? Why was he living in such an ignoble manner? Is he humiliating me? This young man is not ordinary. You don't want to tell me? Ling Xiao nodded and looked at the chains that had pierced through the body of the heavenly alligator. At this moment, he realized that the chains were not real, but were formed by the Tao laws of the array. It contained a strange power that extracted the heavenly alligator's blood qi, spiritual energy, and even soul power and gathered them above the array. No wonder Eni hated that woman called Ziyan so much. If this formation was Ziyan's doing, that woman was truly vicious. Boy, I am the leader of the heavenly alligator clan, a peerless expert of the 9th grade divine emperor realm. Do you know the heavenly alligator clan? The heavenly alligator clan, the overlord of the endless sea domain. Eni was unwilling to give up. He shook his scales and showed off to Ling Xiao. Why is there no demonic aura on you? Also, if you are a 9th grade divine emperor, why are you trapped here? With the level of Ling Xiao's divine soul, he could search the heavenly alligator's soul sea directly. However, when he thought of how this demon could survive for thousands of years, he was inexplicably wary. Who knew if there were other tricks in the soul sea of this great demon? Back then, the Heavenly Alligator Clan's soul body was a first-grade divine emperor. There was no risk in eating it. However, the one in front of him was alive. Moreover, with Ziyan's temperament, if this Heavenly Alligator Clan's soul was not strange, she would have searched it until it was retarded. Ling Xiao did not know Ziyan's identity yet. Therefore, to avoid alerting her, it was better not to take risk. I looked surprised. He finally sighed deeply. Since you can come here, it proves that we are fated. I won't hide it from you. I was framed. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. At this moment, he had already guessed the true origin of this heavenly pool. It was likely that Ziyan had sealed the clan master of the Heavenly Alligator Clan here, and used the Tao of Array to extract his blood, qi, and spiritual energy to create this unworldly place. However, what caused Ling Xiao to feel slightly puzzled was what level of cultivation Ziyan possessed to be able to imprison a 9th-grade divine emperor. In the human race, there seemed to be no one with this name. Young man. As long as you get me out of this formation, I'll take you to the ancestral land of my Heavenly Alligator Clan and make you the center of attention in this world. Eni's body flickered with divine light. Even though his realm had fallen and his cultivation was no longer there, he still had a majestic aura. Ancestral Heavenly Alligator Land? So, the Heavenly Alligator Clan is not actually extinct? Ling Xiao's eyes flickered. From the memory of the young master of the Heavenly Alligator Clan, he did know that there was a forbidden area of the Sea Clan in the depths of the boundless sea, and the inheritance of the Heavenly Alligator Clan was there. But now, with the appearance of the clan master, Ling Xiao felt that things were not as simple as he had imagined. Back then, the Heavenly Alligator Clan was slaughtered by the Demon Clan and was indeed extinct. However, our ancestor followed the ancient god to conquer the 9 heavens and gave us a celestial array that could seal a world. I took a deep breath, and there seemed to be a touch of vicissitudes on his face. 1,000 years ago, I led the remnants of the clan to hide in the ancestral land and barely escaped the calamity. Hearing this, Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He had read such novels before. In ancient times, in order to avoid calamity, some almighty people sealed their cultivation and divine souls and hid in the void turbulence, hoping that one day they would survive the calamity and have a chance to be reborn. The Heavenly Alligator Clan was indeed an ancient clan. It seemed that the ancestor of the Heavenly Alligator Clan was quite capable. An ancient god's mount? What was his cultivation level now? But Eni was the king of the Sea Clan 1,000 years ago. Whether it was his cultivation level or his means, he was far beyond the current strong cultivators of the Xingzhou continent. But how did he end up in his current situation? Of all things, I shouldn't have believed that woman Ziyan's nonsense. I hate it. Eni roared angrily and finally looked at Ling Xiao with excitement. Young man, do you want to become an immortal? Do you want to set foot on the top of the world? You don't have to cultivate for 1,000 years or go through life and death experiences. As long as you help me get out of here, I will help you fulfill your wish. To tell you the truth, the Heavenly Alligator Clan has the celestial source bestowed by the Immortal Clan. It can reverse the change of the bloodline, shed the mortal body, and become an innate being. As long as you help me get out of here, I will take you back to my ancestral land and give you a strand of the celestial source. Oh? This celestial source can be divided? Ling Xiao nodded in realization. No wonder Eni did not have any demonic aura. Instead, there was a kind of spiritual aura of heaven and earth. It turned out that the celestial source had such a magical effect. Moreover, it seemed that the strand of celestial source he had obtained before was not complete. There should be some left in the ancestral land of the Heavenly Alligator. Of course. When my clan was slaughtered, I divided the celestial source into 4 strands and placed them in 3 people's bodies. Only one strand was hidden in the ancestral land in case of an accident. Young man, as long as you find a way to save me, I will give you that strand of celestial source. What do you think? Eni's tone was excited, and his eyes sparkled with expectation. 300 years. He had been trapped here for nearly 300 years. Although Ziyen, that ruthless woman, did not kill him, what she did was even more vicious. She made him, the leader of the Overlord clan, into the eye of a spiritual array. Now, his cultivation had fallen from level 9 to level 6. If this continued for a few more years, he was afraid that he would be sucked dry. Oh, 4 strands? Who has the remaining 2 strands? Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at Eni with interest. Huh? Shouldn't you be asking who has the remaining 3 strands? Eni was startled. Could it be that this young man, who looks handsome, is actually a retard? I said 4 strands. One of them is in the ancestral land, so there are still 3 strands left. I used to have 1 strand, but Ziyen, that vicious woman, tricked me. As for the remaining 2 strands, they are in the bodies of the 2 strongest geniuses of my heavenly alligator clan. Eni let out a sigh. His expression seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. He already knew that the immortal clan eventually destroyed the demon clan and became 9 heavens supremes. However, his heavenly alligator clan would not be able to live up to its former glory. So, the 2 geniuses also had their cultivation and divine soul sealed, and they could only return to the world 1,000 years later? Sai, my eldest son, Ego, has a strong nature. He has the temperament of a supreme and believes in killing. He didn't hide in the ancestral land with us. My youngest son, Ijan, is missing, huh? What do you mean? Instinctively, Ling Xiao felt that there was a story behind Ijan. When Zhan left the ancestral land, he wanted to investigate the situation of the world. He didn't expect to meet Ziyen, that B*TCH, who promised to help him reunite the ocean. In the end, Eni's eyes were burning with anger. He clenched his fist. The night before their wedding, she sealed Zhan cultivation with medicinal wine, dug out his beast core, and took away his immortal origin. Oh? Your son went out to investigate, so how did you know about this? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. Eni's face was inexplicably twisted. I was worried about Zhan. Then, I walked out of the ancestral land and also met Ziyen, that B*TC. Chapter 690. Oh? So, you and your son have both fallen into the hands of a woman? Hearing Eni's words, Ling Xiao's face instantly bloomed with a bright smile. That's right. When I was captured by Ziyen, she showed me Zhan's celestial origin. But I have a wisp of Zhan's soul in the clan token. He is not dead. Even about 10 years ago, I vaguely felt his aura through the clan token. But I was trapped in the array, so I only emitted a wisp of fluctuation. I don't know if Zhan can feel it. Eni gritted his teeth fiercely. Obviously, he hated the woman named Ziyen very much. Sure enough, this Zhan is a bit interesting. Ling Xiao nodded and chuckled. There was no story. Most likely, he was trapped or killed like Eni. The night before the wedding, his monster core was dug out and his celestial origin was taken away? What are you waiting for? Awaken the peerless bloodline quickly. Humph, bitch, you think the celestial origin is my trump card? I should thank you. If you didn't dig out my monster core, how could I awaken the bloodline of the Supreme of the 9 heavens? Wait for me. One day, I will avenge you for digging out my monster core. Are you familiar with this trick? Ling Tian's elixir C was dug out by the moon of Xianyuan. He awakened the sword vein divine physique and embarked on the path of a peerless sword cultivator. Now, the clan master of the heavenly alligator clan and his son were undoubtedly more miserable because they were betrayed by a woman. Moreover, they were so defenseless, which proved that both of them loved the woman named Ziyan deeply. Ling Xiao was not very interested in Yijan. This model's golden finger was nothing more than a bloodline physique. Now, this kind of destiny was everywhere. It was nothing more than a blessing in disguise and embarking on the road of revenge. He was more interested in the woman who dug out the monster cores of Yanai and Yijan, the two ancient overlord clans. She was a villain. More villains than Phoenix Rouge. To be able to deceive Yanai and Yijan and capture the father and son, this woman was most likely from the Demon Clan or the Sea Clan. Although there were many sea clans in the sea area, they were in awe of the Heavenly Alligator Clan. After all, this ancient clan was a vassal of the Celestial Clan and had been given the Celestial Source as an absolute overlord. Yet, she had done the exact opposite. She had dug out his Dan, seized his source, and replaced him? Moreover, most importantly, she had trapped the overlord of the sea region in the human race's celestial sect. For the myriad races of the sea region, this was already detrimental to their destiny. But she was also called the proud sons of heaven of the sea races. Every 100 years, she would come to the immortal sect to harvest a wave of human proud sons of heaven. To the destiny of humanity, this was an act of destruction. Interesting. What was this woman planning? Ziyan? I'll remember you. So you don't have any beast cores or immortal resources? Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. In the end, you're just a piece of trash. What's the point of keeping you around if you can't even trigger a sliver of luck in such a classic situation? As for that Yijan, no one knew where he was hiding. Of course, Ling Xiao could roughly guess why Ziyan had trapped the clan master of the Heavenly Alligator Clan here. The ancient hegemon race was exterminated, but they did not fall. Once this clan was born, the sea region would be in turmoil. The reason why Ziyan didn't kill Yanai directly was either because she had a huge grudge against him and wanted him to suffer a fate worse than death, or she had sensed that Yijan was extraordinary. She had left a way out so that if there were any unforeseen circumstances, she would have a way to deal with it. Cautious and thorough. This was indeed the self-cultivation of a qualified villain. However, since there was still an immortal source in the ancestral land of the Heavenly Alligator, the young man with the destiny of the Heavenly Alligator Clan would most likely go and look for it. In that case, that's right. But, looking at the playful smile on the young man's face, Yanai had a feeling that he had just entered hell and was about to enter the next level. But don't worry. My Heavenly Alligator Clan's ancestral land is located in the depths of the sea region. It was originally the place where my ancestors were buried. It formed its own space and was guarded by several strong clans. When I came out, I closed the portal. Without the Heavenly Alligator Clan token and the power of the immortal source, no one can enter. I promise you that as long as you save me, I will give you the immortal source in the ancestral land after I have avenged my blood feud and taken back the immortal source. Oh, is that so? Clan Master, can you show me what the Heavenly Alligator Clan token is? Ling Zhao's eyes were cold. Yanai immediately nodded and smiled. It is this vertical scale between my eyebrows. Humph, no matter how scheming Ziyan is, I'm afraid she didn't expect that the key to open my clan's ancestral land is with me. At this time, Yanai wasn't too vigilant. After all, in his opinion, even if Ling Xiao had the clan token, he didn't have the immortal source. Ziyan, just you wait. When I break out of the array, I will command all clans and kill you in my hands. However, just as Ling Xiao stretched out his hand and pulled off the golden scale between Yi's eyebrows, he looked at the space above his head. Not to mention the credibility of the Heavenly Alligator Clan's words. Even if he really intended to give the immortal source to him, how could he take back the immortal source from Ziyan and open the ancestral land? You're probably thinking about Tao Zi, right? 300 years, 2 immortal sources, 2 monster cores. Although Ling Xiao didn't know Ziyan, He thought that the woman's current cultivation had probably reached the peak of perfection. If I still had a monster core, he might be able to subdue him as a fighter. But now look at him. He's tall and flat, and his whole body is golden. Doesn't he look like a huge, spiritual stone? Buzz! A pitch-black ancient blade suddenly appeared in Ling Zhao's hand. Although there was no fluctuation on it, it inexplicably sent chills down one's spine. Young man, what are you trying to do? Don't mess around. Let me tell you, don't think that I can't kill you just because I'm trapped in the array. The golden scales on Ni's body trembled, emitting a dazzling brilliance. Even the ancient array above his head was emitting a dazzling light at this time. In just an instant, the spiritual light around Ni's body was extinguished, and his expression instantly became dispirited. Young man, you may not know how precious the immortal source is. This thing. You're talking about this, right? Ling Xiao smiled, and a wisp of spiritual light suddenly appeared in his hand. The expression on Ni's face froze almost instantly. He stared blankly at the immortal source in Ling Zhao's hand. After a long while, he let out a hearty laugh. Ha 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 ha. It turns out that you're one of us. I was wondering why young master looked so cold and arrogant. Turns out that you're also a vassal of the immortal clan. Even though I was knowledgeable, he naturally didn't expect that his son would be killed by Ling Xiao after 1,000 years. However, at this time, Ling Xiao didn't look at him anymore. Instead, he slashed at the rock wall above his head several times. Then, under Ni's somewhat stunned gaze, he, along with the entire array, suddenly changed space and appeared in another place with beautiful mountains and clear waters. Ling Xiao walked to Ni's side, picked him up with one hand, and then placed him at the bottom of the mountain along with the entire ancient array. At the top of the mountain, a spiritual pool bloomed with divine light, and the water in the pool gradually filled with spiritual charm. Although it was far less vast than the heavenly pool, it also had its own immortal charm. Immediately afterward, Ling Xiao waved his palm lightly, and a wisp of golden flames appeared in his hand. He also placed it at the bottom of the stone pool, turning it into a boundary that blocked Ni's divine sense and completely sealed it with the array. Ding dong! The celestial hot spring was born. Life wasn't just about the present. There should also be more emotions in it. This hot spring was several square feet, enough to accommodate 10 people at the same time. When the time comes, cultivation and enjoyment at the same time. Gulp. At the bottom of the mountain, I looked at the unfamiliar space in front of him with a dull expression. The familiar darkness made his eyes a little hollow. What's going on? Why does it suddenly feel like the soup is different but the medicine is different? At the same time, in the heavenly pool, the moment the ancient array at the bottom of the pool disappeared, the valley that was originally full of immortal charm suddenly rumbled. In a breath's time, the mountain rocks cracked, the divine trees withered, and even the heavenly pool's water seemed to have seeped into the ground and disappeared. Phoenix Rouge opened her eyes, and there was a hint of surprise on her face. What she experienced just now was like a dream. She only felt that she had fallen into a deep sleep, and it was extremely unreal. But, before she could fully understand the reason, her eyes suddenly widened. At this moment, the southern border prodigies in front of him were nowhere to be seen. A strong smell of blood permeated the air, and there seemed to be some bones and rotten flesh that had not completely rotted at the bottom of the heavenly pool. Phoenix Rouge's pretty face froze, and when she carefully sensed her cultivation level, she had entered the 4th stage of the Divine Lord realm. Damn it! Her poisonous body was exposed? Boom! Just as Phoenix Rouge gritted her teeth and thought of a million things, the spirit fog boundary that originally covered the heavenly pool suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, the figures of Helian Shan, Su Yunzi, and the other celestial sect elders appeared in the distance, standing in the void and looking at her in shock. Phoenix Rouge, what did you do? Chapter 691. What's going on? Where's the saint? Where did the saint go? Helian Shan's heart was in a mess as he hovered in midair. When he and the other immortal sect elders stood outside the heavenly pool immortal gate, they felt a terrifying wave of energy coming from within. After that, the spirit fog array formation that enveloped the heavenly pool suddenly collapsed, revealing the horrifying scene in front of them. Of course, Helian Shan didn't really care whether the others were dead or not. At most, he would just kill Phoenix Rouge and give an explanation to the forces behind these people. However, Saint Ling Xiao was nowhere to be seen. Who should I explain to? Should I tell the Divine Envoy or the Divine Master that the saint came to my immortal mystic sect to train and unfortunately died in the hands of my immortal mystic sect's disciples? I don't think there's a need to explain. I'll just explain myself. Sect Master Helian, what do you mean by this? How dare you kill my ocean race's prodigy? The only ocean race elder had just finished speaking when he felt a wave of spirit aura tear through the void and ruthlessly slap his face. Poochie. Almost without hesitation, that ocean race elder's figure was instantly sent flying. He crashed into the ancient forest below and no longer moved. His cultivation was only at the third stage of the God Emperor realm. How could he be a match for the furious Helian Shan? Are you blind? I killed your ocean race's prodigy, but only one of your ocean race's prodigy died. Can't you see that my human race's saint is gone? F***ck. Helian Shan gritted his teeth fiercely. He no longer had the calmness of a sect master. The death of the saint was a serious matter. If he didn't handle it properly, he would lose his life and reputation. Phoenix Rouge, you. At this moment, Su Yunzi's face was already ghastly pale. He looked at Phoenix Rouge, who was standing in the middle of the pool with a dazed expression. He had long known that this eldest disciple of his had cultivated the art of poison. However, he didn't expect that she would cause such a huge disaster today. But how is this possible? That Saint Ling Xiao's methods were heaven-defying and invincible. How could he be so easily poisoned to death? Master. Phoenix Rouge's jade-like hands clenched tightly. Her eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. In the end, this day had still arrived? The world could not tolerate it. Sky poison. She has the sky poison body. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, a rotting figure suddenly crawled out of the ancient forest beside the heavenly lake. It was the sea tribe's genius. The skin on his body had long festered, and his aura was weak. His demonic aura was gone, and it seemed like he would not be able to survive. Blood splattered down, causing the vegetation beneath his body to instantly rot. What? Heavenly poison body? The expressions of Helian Shan and the others instantly changed greatly when they heard this. Even Su Yunzi closed his eyes in despair. Unlucky year, unlucky year. His youngest disciple had just colluded with the devil and massacred the entire sect. Who would have thought that this eldest disciple would also possess the taboo poison physique that was not tolerated by the world, and had even poisoned the Holy Sun to death? I think the two of you really want me dead? Sky poison body? How is that possible? On the mountain path, countless disciples of the immortal sect looked terrified. They looked at Feng Rouge with fear in their eyes. They had more or less heard of the poison body. The Xingzhou's first sky poison woman came from the southern border. It was said that this woman's cultivation was terrifying, and even her breath could poison god thearchs. Any living being that came into contact with her would not be able to escape death. She was a taboo in the Xingzhou. In the end, this woman was trapped in a valley by dozens of god thearchs and burned for 49 days before she was killed. It was said that when the poison woman was about to die, her painful cries could be heard for thousands of miles. It was quite tragic, and she said that she would return sooner or later. Who would have thought that such a physique would appear in the southern border today? Phoenix Rouge, are you going to kill yourself, or do you want me to kill you? Helion Shan took a deep breath, and killing intent could be seen between his brows. Am I really going to die here? Phoenix Rouge sighed softly. Several rays of spiritual light suddenly bloomed around her, and her figure gradually disappeared. You still want to run? Helion Shan shouted angrily. He formed a seal with one hand, and it became 1,000 feet large and suppressed the heavenly lake below him. Boom! In an instant, the mountain peak collapsed, and the ancient forest was reduced to ashes. Phoenix Rouge's figure was unable to escape this heaven and earth. She appeared in the void and was suppressed by the ancient seal. It looked like she was about to die. As expected, villains have to be killed in the end. Phoenix Rouge's smile was sad, and there was a trace of death on her beautiful face. At this moment, a white-robed figure suddenly walked over slowly from below the heavenly lake. He hugged the young girl who fell from the sky and pulled her into his arms. At the same time, at the foot of the immortal mystic mountain, Xiong Huan and the others stood with their hands behind their backs and looked at the peak of the immortal mystic mountain. A ripple quietly rippled, and then Ling Zhao's figure appeared in front of everyone. In the instant that the heavenly lake's formation collapsed, his original body had already escaped, leaving behind the purple Qi Pure Tao body to put on a good show with Phoenix Rouge. Although the seal on the primordial demon blade was slowly being undone, primordial mystic gold was rare. If he wanted to truly display the power of this demon blade, he could only go through endless slaughter. Now that the celestial mystic sect was about to be destroyed, he did not want to miss this opportunity. However, if he killed someone as the saint, it would inevitably make Phoenix Rouge, Qin Chu, and the others suspicious. He still had to put on a show, and the goal was to move the girl. He was not the one who killed her, but the demon. Women, do you really think they want gifts? Sometimes they care more about your attitude. Greetings, Master. Gu Zhen, Xiong Huan, and the others immediately bowed. Only Hua Yoji's face flashed with surprise. Master? Why does this young man's figure look so familiar? Where are they? Ling Xiao nodded indifferently and glanced at everyone in front of him. At this moment, his face was covered by the demonic mist, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. However, the darkness in his eyes was like a black hole in the universe, causing fear in people's hearts. They are all in the forest. Xiong Huan turned around and led Ling Xiao into the ancient forest. However, he saw the 8 sea race emperors kneeling on the ground with their heads down and feet down. They looked extremely lonely. How could they not be lonely? After waiting for 100 years, they finally had the chance to fight for the heavenly lake. They originally thought that they could happily come to the human race's sacred land and show off. However, instead of showing off, they were humiliated and now became prisoners. Who could bear this kind of grievance? Open your soul seas and be my slaves. Ling Xiao shouted softly. The 8 sea race emperors only hesitated for a moment before obediently opening their soul seas and allowing Ling Xiao to plant a soul seal. However, inexplicably, everyone felt that this young man's voice was somewhat familiar. All right, let them go. You, return to the sea race and tell them that the celestial mystic sect master broke the agreement and killed the sea race expert. Ling Xiao looked coldly at one of the sea race emperors and said coldly, Yes, master. Hearing this, the sea race emperor stood up and turned to leave. Wait, take this elixir. Thank you, master. The sea race emperor was slightly stunned, and then a trace of gratitude appeared in his eyes. Master, you are so righteous. You gave me an elixir when you saw that my aura was unstable. However, he never dreamed that the elixir contained a strand of Phoenix Rouge's hair. At that time, his mission would be completed. Ling Xiao would only need to use some means to dissolve the elixir and poison him to death thousands of miles away. As a villain, of course, he had to be careful. In this way, the news of the sky poison manifestation would spread throughout the sea race. At that time, the Phoenix Rouge would be truly intolerable. Stinky sister, look, you are really stinking now. Therefore, you had better stay by my side obediently. Maybe you can survive. Let me tell you a secret. I have a big house that can hide 3,000 beauties. Chapter 692. Ling Xiao only turned to look in the direction of the mountain when the ocean race god emperor disappeared into the distance. Although the demon sect's strength was greatly reduced, how much better could the celestial mystic sect be? Moreover, if Helian Shan had not used the ancient array to suppress the 4 demon sect leaders, the celestial mystic sect would have been destroyed the last time the demon sect attacked. Oh no! With me, the Saint Ling Xiao, around, how could the demon sect be so presumptuous? However, Helian Shan would never have imagined that the demon sect that he had suppressed the other day would be preparing to attack again today. Damn! Did I not think of that? No one would have thought of that. The 2 leaders of the demon sect had died, and countless disciples had died. It had only been 3 days and they were making a comeback? Of course, if not for the 7th grade pill that Ling Xiao had given him, the great demon would not have recovered so quickly. Moreover, the great demon had joined forces with the ocean race. Let's go. It's time to destroy the celestial mystic sect today. Ling Xiao's lips curled into a smile as he walked towards the peak of the mountain. He was not in a hurry. He had to give the purple Qi pure Dao body some time to perform. However, after destroying the celestial mystic sect today, he should head to the ocean race. Calculating the time, it was almost time to meet Shi-Er, an ignorant, pure, and noble girl from the ocean race. Did you think that I would pretend to be Qingyu and cheat her of her heart? Childish. Ridiculous. Am I such a despicable and shameless person in your hearts after being with you for so long? I, Ling Xiao, am the light of the righteous path, just to let her see Qingyu's true colors. Oh right. Do you know who is Ziyan? On the mountain path, Ling Xiao suddenly thought of something and turned to look at the ocean race god emperors. Ziyan? The ocean race god emperors looked at each other blankly. However, in the next moment, extreme fear flashed in their eyes. Hiss. Master, you can't call this name casually. This is the name of the new sea race emperor. Sha Yun's old face was solemn as he moved closer to Ling Xiao and said softly, "Oh? The Sea Emperor's name?" Ling Xiao smiled faintly, not feeling too surprised. After all, villains like this who dug for pills and seas would usually achieve great things after obtaining good fortune. In fact, the higher one's achievements were, the more satisfying it would be to be slapped in the face by the heavens in the future. The reincarnation of immortal emperors and the return of experts were all the same. It was nothing more than creating conflicts and resolving them. The process in the middle would depend on how well they did it. However, Ling Xiao also understood why the Endless Sea region, which had been in turmoil for hundreds of years, was suppressed by one person. 2 immortal sources, 2 ancient heavenly crocodile beast cores, one of which was a 9th stage god emperor. It was enough for her to look down on the sea domain. The biggest difference between humans and demons was that humans cultivated their core sea, while demons cultivated their Yao core, which was where spiritual energy was located. However, compared to the human race, the demon race's world was much crueler. The law of the jungle was still the law of survival for the demon race. Consuming the flesh and blood of monster cores could increase one's cultivation. It was very obvious that Ziyan's current cultivation level had already reached the 9th grade. Otherwise, how could a woman like her intimidate the entire ocean? Interesting, it was getting more and more interesting. At this moment, Ling Xiao did not feel the slightest bit of respect for the Empress of the Endless Sea region. Instead, he was somewhat curious. Whether human or demon, as long as there was desire, there would be a flaw. Since she had unified the Endless Sea region, It did not mean that she did not want to unify the Xingzhou region. Boom. However, the moment Sha Yun's voice fell, he suddenly felt his neck sink, and his entire body was pulled into the air by a huge force. In front of the Lord, all living things are ants. Those who look down on the Lord deserve to die. Xiong Huan's eyes were indifferent, but the words that came out of his mouth were extremely intimidating. All right, let's go up the mountain. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and finally walked up the mountain without hesitation. At this moment, on the immortal mystic peak, countless immortal sect elders and disciples were looking at the sudden appearance of the white-clothed figure in shock, their eyes filled with all kinds of complicated expressions. Phoenix Rouge raised her head in a daze, looking at the incomparably handsome face in front of her. Her red mouth was slightly open, but she did not speak for a long time. The third time, could it be, he really is my destiny? But how is that possible? For a light of righteousness like him, it had always been his responsibility to punish evil. It was the law of the world. With a flawless Tao heart, how could he be trapped by love? Could it be that my golden finger is really an immortal face? The son of destiny fell in love with a girl of the evil path? The domineering CEO fell in love with me? It does feel a little romantic. Rouge, are you all right? Ling Zhao's expression was solemn, but his eyes revealed a tinge of gentleness. Gulp. Phoenix Rouge hurriedly struggled to get up from Ling Zhao's arms. She wiped the corner of her mouth and shook her head slightly. Young master. You don't have to say anything, but why didn't you tell me earlier? Ling Xiao sighed and looked at the countless bloody bones in the heavenly lake, as well as the rotting sea tribe prodigy. He suddenly stretched out his finger and instantly crushed the last trace of life in the sea tribe prodigy. SSS Burr. In the ancient forest, the sea tribe god Tharch, who had been sent flying by Helian Shan, stood up shakily. He stared blankly at the figure that had been crushed by Ling Zhao's 2 fingers. Then, he trembled and fell to the ground again. Young master, to be honest, Feng Rugu was already panicking and at a loss. Why is the plot different from what I imagined? If she had known that Ling Xiao had such deep feelings for her, she would not have schemed against him. She would have drunk wine, danced, and beaten the tiger. Wasn't that better? F***ck. Forget it. It's meaningless. It's probably because I'm not good enough. I can't even gain your trust. Ling Xiao sighed softly. The sadness in his expression made Phoenix Rouge's heart ache for him. No way. It's not like that. Lord Ling Xiao, how should I tell you? Destiny and villains are destined to have no future. Holy Sun Ling Xiao, what do you mean? Helian Shan frowned and looked at Ling Xiao in surprise. This holy son of the sacred sect was planning to protect this heavenly poison demoness? Today, I won't allow anyone to hurt her. Ling Xiao shook his head and did not say anything. The evil ancient sword in his hand shone brightly. Holy Sun, you have to think clearly. She has the heavenly poison body. She will bring disaster to the world. If you protect her, you will become the enemy of all the cultivators in the world. Helian Shan's expression changed several times before he finally shouted loudly. If it was in the past, he would not have dared to challenge Ling Zhao's authority. However, the heavenly poison body was related to all the lives in the world. Phoenix Rouge was also a disciple of his immortal sect. He would never allow this woman to leave the mountain and bring disaster to the world. So what? Between heaven and earth, the sound of a sword suddenly resounded. Looking at the tall and proud figure in white clothes and green sword in front of him, Phoenix Rouge really teared up this time. Why did he insist on becoming the enemy of the world even though he knew that he was evil? Was he not afraid of being cursed by the world and becoming the enemy of the world? Chapter 693. Holy Sun Ling Xiao, don't ruin your future because of your personal feelings. Helian Shan's expression was gloomy and confused. This holy son didn't look like someone who cared about personal feelings. Why did he have to protect the heavenly poison woman today? Young master, sect master is right. It's not worth it for me. Phoenix Rouge sighed and walked to Ling Zhao's side with a smile on her face. However, she didn't really want to ask Ling Zhao to abandon her. Given Ling Zhao's status, who knew if he was just being impulsive? What if he went back on his word after Helian Shan analyzed the pros and cons for him? It was the hardest thing to give up. However, judging from the current situation, even if Ling Zhao protected her wholeheartedly, she wouldn't be able to escape death today. Ling Zhao was very strong and could even be compared to the experts of the older generation. However, there were too many god emperors in this mountain. They didn't dare to touch Ling Zhao, but they had to kill someone to end today's tragedy. Kill who? Kill the villain, of course. Phoenix Rouge felt that the chaos in the heavenly lake was a little strange. However, the heavenly poison body was exposed in the end. You still don't believe me? Ling Zhao's eyes were cold, but he couldn't hide his disappointment. Then, under Phoenix Rouge's shocked gaze, he stepped forward and stood in front of the 6 god emperors of the immortal sect. Leave. We have nothing to do with each other in the future. Little guy, are you trying to play hard to get with me? In terms of acting skills, why don't you go out and ask around what kind of status I, Ling Zhao, have in the Xingzhou? F***CK. Young master? Phoenix Rouge's lips trembled, but she didn't know what to say. In the end, she sighed softly. The spirit talisman in her hand flickered and her figure gradually blurred. Holy Sun! Do you know what will happen if you let her go? The reputation of the Holy Church will be destroyed in your hands. Helian Shan's expression was one of despair. Seeing that Ling Zhao was completely unmoved, he could only clench his teeth and send a palm strike at him. Saint Sun, you can disregard the reputation of the Holy Church, but I, Helian Mountain, cannot watch you commit such a grave mistake. I've said it already. Today, no one is allowed to harm her in the slightest. Ling Zhao turned his head and looked deeply at the Phoenix Rouge. The ancient sword in his hand suddenly slashed out, and it crashed towards Helian Shan. What a joke! What does the reputation of the saint have to do with the sky demon? Even the entire immortal mystic sect is not as important as Phoenix Rouge in my eyes. I'm not a scumbag. I just want to give her lonely soul a harbor to stay in. Young master, Phoenix Rouge looked at the back of the young man who was swinging his sword with all his might. But at this moment it was like a carving that was deeply imprinted in his heart. Could it be that I was really wrong? Shouldn't there be too many routines in life? In my previous life, I would linger late into the night and indulge in a life of luxury. That's why I was punished. In this life, I've been absurd for 20 years. My life was lonely and boring. If someone were to love me deeply, even if it's just for a moment, I would be filled with joy, right? Suddenly, Phoenix Rouge's Dao heart trembled slightly, and the hesitation in his eyes disappeared. If the heavenly Dao's punishment will come sooner or later, why can't I be more carefree? Especially since Ling Zhao is the mandate of heaven and is immune to her sky poison. Does this count as being a romantic ghost if I die under a peony flower? We have nothing to do with each other anymore? Young master, Rouge will repay today's kindness in the future. In the end, Phoenix Rouge's figure slowly disappeared above the void. I'm a little touched, but I didn't say that I'm not afraid of death. Ling Zhao is the mandate of heaven and will definitely not die. But I have to avoid today's disaster first before I can repay young master's kindness, right? At that time, young master, I have no way to repay you. I'm afraid I can only repay you with my body? A relationship starts with a routine and ends with being tricked. Beep. The mandate of heaven's Dao heart is shaken and wants to offer her body. Congratulations to the host for plundering 500 luck points and 5,000 villain points. Beep. Due to the mandate of Heaven's poison body and her strong desire, the system will now provide the following pills for free. 6 Flavor Nourishment Pill, Overturning Rain Pill, C Stabilizing Divine Needle Spirit Liquid, Get Lost. Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and shouted coldly. I have the Sky Demon body, the strongest in the 9 heavens. Do I need pills? But she's finally shaken. From the shock when they first met to the scheming now. In the end, Phoenix Rouge still fell into Ling Xiao's hands after more than 10 years. Being touched is just the beginning. Soon, I'll make you sink into depravity. Rouge, I'm the only one in the 9 heavens who can feel your loneliness. Pfft. With one last look, Phoenix Rouge saw that the white-robed young man who should be dazzling was suppressed by Hellion Shan and fell from the sky. Blood was spilled and heavy rain suddenly fell from the sky. Thunder roared as dark clouds gathered, making Ling Xiao's white robes look even more resplendent and dazzling. But the heavy rain not only drenched the young man's white robe and hair, but also Phoenix Rouge's restless heart. Young master, wait for me. Buzz. The last ripple appeared in the sky. Hellion Shan looked up in despair with a bitter look in his eyes. She still managed to escape. From now on, the Celestial Mystic sect would not be able to escape the sin of protecting the Sky Poison Lady. As for the 2 words Ling Xiao, they were no longer filled with glory. He was tainted. The word love was really hard to understand. Who would have thought that even the peerless saint of the Celestial sect would be destroyed by this word? Of course, if Ling Xiao knew what Hellion Shan was thinking right now, he would probably wet his pants. Now that he had left a mark on Phoenix Rouge, no matter where she went, she would not be able to escape from Ling Xiao's detection. Moreover, given how cautious this Lady of Destiny was, she would not dare to stay in the human race's territory. Therefore, there was a high chance that she would hide in the Sea Tribe. But when she appeared in the Sea Tribe, she would realize that her sky-poison body had already spread throughout the entire sea region. Damn! Southern border is thousands of miles wide, but there is not an inch of pure land for you. Rouge, you are only in my arms, safe and quiet. Phew! Hellion Shan's body flickered with spiritual light, blocking the rain 3 feet above his head. But at this moment, the Celestial Sect Master's face was no longer kind. Instead, there was a trace of loneliness. Saint, do you know what kind of disaster Southern Border will face because of your stubbornness? So, Sect Master, what do you want to do? Ling Xiao's lips curved into a gentle smile as he raised his head and looked at the Celestial Sect elders in front of him. Although you are the saint, your actions today have already violated morality. So, I need to capture you and hand you over to the first divine envoy. Hellion Shan took a deep breath as his eyes gradually turned cold. Someone had to bear the consequences of today's tragedy. Otherwise, his celestial mystic sect would become the target of public criticism. Saint Ling Xiao, your Tao is too narrow after all. So what if you are a young emperor? You will go astray sooner or later by going against the orthodox Tao. You will not be tolerated by the common people. Is that so? Ling Xiao smiled faintly as he counted in his heart. 3, 2, 1, boom! On the mountain path far away, a vast spiritual power suddenly tore apart the curtain of rain and transformed into a demonic intent that covered thousands of miles to cover the void. The determination on Hellion Shan's face had yet to disappear, but it completely froze at this moment. What the hell? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.